Hello, everybody. Welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is September 4th, 2020. I'm Kerry Holzman. Who the heck are you? You gotta love The Simpsons. All right, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get around to getting to a broadcast today. Lots of things pulling me, lots of different directions. But here I am, and I'm hoping I can at least do a little something, something to take another step forward towards getting things done. And I've got a couple of items coming I'm excited to share with you, including a Amazon listed another H370 HD3 motherboard in their warehouse, so I bought it. I might have a problem. But anyway, now that I'm getting so many of those, I might just send that other one with the weird video issue. I might send that one back. I don't know. But I don't have time to deal with it right now. So what I want to try and do today is finish up the build for Roy, and from the previous build video that we did here, we got the H370 HD3 board, the Scythe Mugen 5, the EVGA Bronze Series power supply, and it's got Windows installed and activated and updated. But what we need to do yet, what remains is the Asus wireless card has to be installed, and the GeForce GTX 1660 has to be installed, and yet everything has to be tested, right? We need to run Prime 95, we need to run Time Spy, and we need to get the Wi-Fi card installed. Once all of that's done, we'll do the Wi-Fi card last, and then it'll just be some cable management, and then it can be buttoned up. Monday is a holiday here in America, so no shipping on Monday. But then maybe, and ideally, I can get it out to Roy on Tuesday, I hope. Hello to my good friends here in blue joining us. Tony Wallow with $1.99. Thank you, Tony. He says hello. John Craig contributes £5 and says, "Who the hell are you, and what have you done with Carrie?" I'll never tell. You'll never make me tell. Rockin' Rob with a $2 contribution says howdy. And Stuart McMillan contributes £2.99. Hey, thanks you guys. I appreciate it very much. And Patrick wants to know why I am buying all these motherboards. I thought your customers bought parts and you don't sell systems. It's very confusing. When it comes to selling computers to viewers, I don't build computer. I don't sell. See, I've just confused myself. When a viewer contacts me and they're outside of Arizona, it would be irresponsible for me to sell them a computer. For warranty purposes, I don't sell computers outside of Arizona. If you're within Arizona, then you have the option, maybe. For example, my retainer clients, I build all their machines. Um, there are a number of businesses, and it's primarily businesses that I build machines for. And it's because they're already getting billed for me anyway. And in general, on those builds, it's worked out in a way that they're essentially buying the parts, um, and that sales tax has been paid on those parts. That's where the issue is locally. So it doesn't make any sense for somebody, for example, somebody might live in Oregon, which doesn't have a state sales tax. If you bought the system from me, I have to charge you what I paid, which means you're paying Arizona state sales tax. When if you'd ordered the parts yourself, you'd have saved that money. And if you're building, you know, something expensive, that can be several $100s in savings. So yeah, I'm sorry for the confusion. It is as far as YouTube is concerned, or viewers that want me to build computers for them. It's pretty rare that any viewers are in Arizona. We'll see them in the chat room. We might see 3 or 4, but out of 1,600 viewers, there's less than 5 people in Arizona on any live stream, generally speaking, and sometimes maybe just one other, because the stream's going out across the world, not just across the United States. And so there are viewers watching from all over the place. And I often have more viewers in, for example, Pennsylvania or Florida or Italy than I have here in my own home state. So that gets kind of complicated when it comes to um, people want to know what do you charge and how much are the parts and this, that, and the other. I just don't get involved in it. So it's a good question. Thanks for paying attention. I made some small adjustments to the audio. I hope that it's a little less sensitive than it's been in the past. I've spent a few hours looking at some different audio solutions from boom microphones to uh, they sell some microphones that are sold like in a pair, so there's a left and a right, but they're really intended to be like just 12 inches or less away. And then I saw these binaural microphones, which give you the full stereo space in like 3D audio. And I thought I'd give that a shot. The problem I can already anticipate with those is something called floor noise. And the floor noise is just sort of the room noise. So the idea about these binaural microphones is you can hear every little detail. But since I do try to make my videos very realistic and authentic, and I could put some noise compression on them, the idea is that as I move around the room, like right now, I move around the room, my audio doesn't change for you. And if I bring a guest on, like if Mitch comes on and we have two microphones and two levels, in either getting the dual microphone set up, which would be more ideal if we were closer. I don't know because we are inside, so I just don't know. But you're looking at, $500. If I get a shotgun mic, again, we're looking at about $450. Or if I try the binaural, it's about $450. So I thought I'm going to try the binaurals. If I don't like them, if you guys hate them, it's Amazon. I just send them back. I can take that same 450. I can get the pair of Rode, or even Samsung, not Samsung, Samsung or Sansam. They have a pair called CO2s, and the CO2s can go onto a stand on my camera where you can kind of aim them and point them, and we can see how that'll work when I'm on the other side of the counter. Might be horrible, and if it's horrible, I can send them back, and then I can go with the shotgun mic from like the NT4 Plus, I think from Rode was something I was looking at. But it's around $500, 400 or $500. It doesn't do me any good to spend $1,500 and buy them all because at the end of the day, there's only going to be one I like or one you guys like. And if none of those are any good, then it's about fine tuning this. But I sort of like the idea that as I walk around the room, my voice moves around. I think that's pretty darn cool. But if the downside of that is there's a lot of hiss, or if there's a lot of a floor noise, then it's not going to work. So the only thing I can do is try it. A lot of these microphones that I've just described are typically used in recording choruses or bands, like the two microphones that you can aim, that go on the camera. You might set those over a drum kit so you can pick up the drums and the hi-hats real nice and clean. Drums aren't like a guitar where you can just plug them in directly to your amp. You have to have a microphone pick that up. But it's really hard for me to do research on this because everybody who's reviewing them is either talking directly to the camera and they're 12 inches away, they're not walking around, or they're outdoors, or they're doing music, which none of that applies here. So all I can do is just make a decision, pick one, try it, see what you guys think, and move forward accordingly. So man, that research never ends because the plethora of microphones from companies I've never even heard of before is incredible. It's like never ending. So Rode, R-O-D-E, they're an Australian company, and I've used Rode microphones before. And they tend to be right across the middle. They're not cheap and they're not expensive. In fact, One might say they're really good value for the money, but they're not the best that money can buy. But then you get the best money can buy and you find out you're hearing every little pin drop and it's really annoying. Or some of these require batteries, and if you don't have the batteries and you're broadcasting and you forgot to either turn the microphone on or your battery dies in the middle of a broadcast, well, that sucks. So I'm trying to find something that the camera can power. Usually these things will take like a 48 volt volts to power some of these mics. You have condenser, omnidirectional. I don't know what I need, to be honest. And if you are a microphone expert and you understand what I'm doing and how I move around, and you have a good suggestion for me, don't guess, don't waste my time. But if you, if you actually know microphones and you understand I'm talking to a camcorder with basically what will be microphones mounted on top of it. I'm not going to put a boom up and have somebody hold it, nor am I even going to put a stand with a boom attached. It'll all be attached to the top of the camcorder as the wireless receivers are that I'm using now. And and if without picking up the floor noise, we do want it to. A lot of these shotgun mics pick up what's directly in front of them, and sort of don't focus, or they try and drown out things along the sides. Well, I'll be moving around the sides, so I need it to pick up all around. But if it picks up too much all around, then it may be too much noise that I'm fighting with, just ambient noise, which could take away from the clarity of my voice. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. But the the binaural ones are the ones I'm most interested in, honestly. It's so stupid. Um, Ray Becker says you might want to take a look at heel mics. Are you talking about Heil? I already got a Heil microphone. We don't want a desktop microphone. That's what I use in radio, and that's what I use in old school podcasting. Old school meaning I'm sitting behind a desk and I'm not moving. I need a microphone that remember, I'll be moving around, and a desktop microphone is just not ideal for that. There's also not a lot of room. I don't know if you've noticed, I don't have a lot of room on the desk. And then finally, the other problem with a desktop microphone is you really need a shock mount on it, because I've had a number of guests on here on my channel, and they're using a microphone on a desk. And Mike Smith is really bad about this. He'll touch the desk or tap on the desk, and it goes right through the microphone stand and into the microphone, and you just hear thud, thud, thud while he's talking, or while I'm talking, because he's bumping the table the microphone is on. Now, that's what a shock mount is for. But the problem with a shock mount, or at least in my case, like I've got an old Rode podcaster mic, and the shock mounts are rubber bands that have just stretched out and they don't fit anymore. So you buy a new set of those bands, and they're good for another 18 months, and then the microphone just hangs there limp, and the bands won't tighten anymore. So the newer shotgun microphones that Rode sells have this rubber kind of half moon shock mount that it no longer uses the traditional kind of stretchy rubber bands. So that should last indefinitely, I think. And I do have a Rode shotgun microphone from 10 years ago. And I use that when I film Subaru Mike when he does the Subaru engine videos. And nobody's ever complained about the audio there. But I will tell you, that microphone, that Rode microphone, shotgun mic I have is amazing. And it probably wouldn't hurt me to at least try it here. I think I'm looking for an excuse to see how far along these shotgun mics have come since I purchased that one 10 years ago. That one also uses a 9-volt battery and with no battery strength indicator. So I don't have any idea how many hours I can get out of that microphone without changing the battery, because I don't use it often enough. But I could be in the middle of a broadcast and then the battery starts to fail. And I really would prefer to avoid that for obvious reasons. It may not come to my immediate attention when the microphone stops working. So I might have been talking and building for 15 or 20 minutes before I look in the chat room and they're all saying, we can't hear you anymore. Then I've got to have spare 9-volt batteries to swap out. And then I have to wonder, do I take it apart and start over for the parts that didn't have audio? It doesn't work well for live broadcast for that reason. So ideally, it'll be some type of camera-mounted microphone that runs off power from the camera or uses regular old AA, AAA batteries that I can buy rechargeables, which is what I do now. I go through a set of 4 batteries every 9 hours. But because they're rechargeable, um, no big deal. So when Mitch is here or I have a guest, that's 8 batteries. So I have to have fully charged 8 batteries. And if they're not ready to go, well, it's going to be a couple hours because they take about 3 or 4 hours to charge. And then, I got to plan ahead where the broadcast gets delayed or I have to run to the store and buy some Duracells. And again, within 8 or 9 hours, those batteries are done for. So really looking for a good microphone that can attach to the camera, that can be either powered by the camera through the regular 48-volt microphone power, or runs off standard double or AAA batteries, which are easy to get for recharging. I just make sure I charge them the day before, and it should be good for, my 4 to 8 hour videos. They usually run 3 to 4 hours. So I should talk to the guys over at Tech Deals and see what they're using. But even they are sitting behind a desk. They're not moving. So they could have a microphone on a camera 3 feet away on the desk that's up and pointed, down at the middle. And I suspect that's probably what they're doing. But I know they have somebody off camera that they're talking to who may be adjusting that audio as need be. We don't know. So with me just being me, with no help, I need sort of a magic solution. And that's why I thought having a left and right microphone to pick up the whole room as I move around, take me away from the lapel mic, which, some people were saying they could hear my heart beating through my shirt, or they can hear me swallowing. That can be tuned out, but it would have to be adjusted every single day differently because the noise in the room changes daily. So, again, if you have suggestions for me, if you're a microphone aficionado and you understand those needs, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I do have the binaural set coming on Wednesday, and I'll give them a shot. If nothing else, it'll be fun. I think I'll have a good time with it. Even if I end up sending them back to Amazon, it'll just be kind of fun to experiment with that. This is a really nice camera I'm using. The Canon XF400 has a left and right with 48-volt XLR inputs, and it's a shame I'm not fully taking advantage of it. And it's a greater shame that it just never occurred to me before until a couple of days ago. Well, actually, I guess it's been a couple of weeks, but I keep forgetting. And I almost forgot today. I'm like, there was something I was going to look for. What was it? And I went to order it, and then I went, wait, that's not what I came here for. So anyway, we'll take a look, and hopefully today's audio is a little better than the previous audio this week, as I've made a very few minor adjustments, which may or may not be noticeable. I don't know. Hawk says you could use NVIDIA RTX voice. So I was using NVIDIA RTX voice with the old streamer because there's an RTX 2070 in there. Thready here has a Sapphire Nitro Vega 64, so there's no RTX voice. And I heard somebody commented, thank God he's not using that RTX voice anymore. So everybody's got a different way of defining what they're hearing as being attractive or unattractive. I personally thought the RTX voice was pretty good. More than one person complained about it. So I'm not worried about RTX voice, but I am using a new version of OBS. It's a release candidate that has a more intelligent noise filter than the basic one that's off by default because it uses more CPU. Well, what do I care? I mean, it's Threadripper. Use all the CPU you want. Take all you can use. It's plenty there. So I don't know how it sounds, but I hope it's better than it has earlier in the week. Bob Shoemaker says audio is great. All right, thank you for the feedback, Bob. And Daniel. John says you can't please everyone. This is true, but I still would like to try. Rest assured, the binaural audio is probably going to be the worst thing ever. But I'm doing that for me. I want to see, I want to hear what it's like. I want to see how that works in this environment. Carrie, do they make a shirt clip that will keep the mic you are using further away from your body? Well, it's a clip. You can clip it wherever you want to clip it. Nick says your audio is great just the way it is. All right, thank you, Nick. Bob says keep what you got. It works well. Well, I'm trying the binaural. Definitely. I mean, I'll send it back if I don't like it. It's expensive, but I got to know. I just have to know. Because if it makes you feel like you're in the room with me, oh man, that would be so cool. But if what it ends up doing is bringing up a lot of background noise that I'm competing with, then not so cool. So I'm really excited to try that. Security Van Man contributes $4.99. He says, buy a Coke on me. Nick Poverman contributes $10. He says, I just built myself the long haul build and I am loving it for 4K video editing. Absolutely. Yeah. Joe Bush with $4.99 says, hello from Arizona. All right, well, there's one of the 4 or 5. Hey, Joe, good to see you. Flappity contributes £5 and says, get a Mugen 5. Oh, he's got a Mugen 5. Very great recommendation. Thank you. Right? Past Me contributes €10 and he says, this is for the best tech channel on YouTube. Thank you. That's very kind. Dr. Michael Ferguson in Scotland contributes £10 and says they have a 20% sales tax there. Keshav M contributes $4.99 and says, I hope everything is going well. I was wondering what your thoughts are on NVIDIA's 3000 series. So we talked about that 3 times yesterday, and though I appreciate your contribution, I would rather not keep repeating myself. The short story is, anything that's brand new is going to take a long time for you to get it because there's more demand for it than supply, and those who get it first will have all the problems. I would wait until after the first of the year before I even attempted to try and get my hands on one, which would be very difficult, at least at the manufacturer's suggested retail price. Past Me contributes €10 and says, don't forget the dogs, my dog Dana said to me. Yes, well, the dogs were fed before I went live, but thank you. Chris Kingen with $10. Thank you, Chris. And Mira Ora with $5 and says, my Sapphire Nitron Plus Radeon 5700 XT is working wonderful in Linux, which is great, I guess. Because I was wondering when I woke up this morning, I said, I wonder if anybody running Linux has any issues with a Sapphire Radeon 5700 XT. I really don't deal with Linux at all here. It doesn't keep me in business. So, well, that's an interesting point. I am not quite sure. The sky is blue. I mean, trying to keep it, just trying to keep it in focus tonight. And thank you for the contributions, Mira Ora, Chris, Past Me, and Keshav, and Dr. Michael Ferguson, and Flappity, and Joe Bush, Nick Poverman, Stuart McMillan, Security Van Man, and Rockin' Robin, John Craig, and of course Tony Wallow. I appreciate that. You sound great, but you look tired, William Bailey says. He says, my daughter says her computer's working fabulous, and so is mine. Please take a nap. You know what? That's what this weekend. We've got a 3-day weekend coming up, so there'll be plenty of time. I'm not tired. Despite how I look, I feel great. Thank you. So YouTube is not sending out email notifications, which is great. I love it. I think it's fantastic. You can go back to your YouTube channel, your YouTube account settings, and you'll see there's an option for notifications, and you can adjust that to the options that are available, like using, being notified on your phone. There's other ways you can be notified. But it's all adjusted according to your settings, and then of course according to the little bell icon for each channel, how you want to be notified, or if you want to be notified. Just because you subscribe to a channel, you're not automatically notified. So there's two different areas, and I just got a message that my audio stream's current bit rate is lower than the recommended. They recommend 128 kilobits per second, and my audio bit rate is at what? It should at least be that. My audio is at 44.1 kilohertz. Channels. Interesting. Why it would say that. We should definitely have output. Where's my audio? Streaming video bitrate encoder. Audio's at 160, so I don't know what the problem is there. But this is a release candidate of OBS. It's OBS 26.0.0 RC1, release candidate 1. So maybe that's an issue. I don't know. The OBS is one of the few pieces of software that I'll play around with the betas, because it's usually really, really good, like an improvement over the current versions. And then sometimes not so good. The other thing that concerns me a little, let's see, advanced audio properties, is whether or not I'm in stereo. I guess I only have one microphone, so it doesn't really make any sense. Audio monitoring, desktop intro. Yeah, so all of that looks fine, because I saw this option for mono, and I was like, well, hold on a minute, it shouldn't be mono. But that's okay. It's still coming from one microphone, so it's going to be mono through left and right ear. I suppose I could clip two microphones on, but there's not enough separation for that to really be beneficial to you. James Prezi says, it sounds great to me. And Scott says, you sound clear, but the audio is a little low for headphones standard. Well, I'm looking at my audio output on OBS, and I can see that it's right, so it's not loud. You might be used to listening to stuff loud. It could go up to it could go a little further up. If I could raise it up a little bit here, and that might help, but that's pretty much it. It's any other gain has to be controlled through the camera or through the attenuation settings on the mic. And then when I turn the gain too far up, then you start hearing things like my heart beating and every swallow I take. And so I'm trying to find a solution to that. Because if somebody says, well, your audio's low, and then I crank it up, well, now you're hearing everything. And then if I bring it down, then they say your audio's too low, it's then you start using things like filters for compression or noise suppression is what I mean to say. And then with the noise suppression, you may have like an on-off effect that really annoys a lot of people. So when I stop talking, all the ambient noise in the room goes away, and it's as though somebody shut the audio off. Then I start talking again, and it's like somebody turned the audio back on, and you're hearing all the room noise with my voice. And what's throwing you is the room noise. So what a lot of places, what a lot of like a production company might do is they'll have a microphone that's just recording room noise or room tone is what it's called. And then they can turn microphones on and off for the actors, and you're watching as you're listening as a viewer, and you don't realize that because there's another microphone you're not aware of that's capturing that ambient sound of the room. And the terminology for that is called room tone. And when the room tone goes away, you're like, your brain goes, the audio went off. You were listening to nothing, but you were hearing something. You were hearing the noise of the room, the tone of the room. And when that gets shut off, then it's just complete, absolute nothing. So that's what I think some of the people had an issue with RTX voice. And I've certainly had that issue when I crank the noise suppression up too high on OBS. Now the setting I've got OBS on now, it has no adjustment, like it just works automatically. I have no idea. Tristan says, I don't have any issues with the audio. I can raise the volume if needed. So what some viewers think is they think if you're watching a video where the audio is louder, and then you watch another video where the audio is lower, then the assumption is the other video, the lower one, their audio is not loud enough. And then that annoys them because they have to turn their volume up to bring it up to what they were listening to at another channel. And then when they're done with that, they forgot they turned their volume up. So they go back to another channel where the volume's higher, and then they get their eardrums blown out. And they're like, oh, geez. And then they get really angry at the person with the low volume for something they did to themselves. What are you going to do? Parker X62 has contributed $50. Hey, Parker TX72. That's what, man, I screwed that one up. Contributes $50. So buy a meal on vacation and enjoy yourself. Well, I think I got a little Buddy's Pizza coming my way now. Thank you for that, and definitely moderator status here. So what I'm going to do is let's get the graphics card installed here, and then we'll get the drivers installed and run some benchmarks. I think that's what I need to do right now. So on this build, we've got a Zotac Gaming GeForce GTX 1660 graphics card, which the tape is all still sealed. It's all brand new. It's never been opened. Everything I do on my channel is live. It's unscripted. It's unrehearsed. If you don't believe me, just watch. And it kind of gives you a realistic expectation of how often dead on arrival parts occur, how parts are packed in boxes, what the boxes look like. And it's pretty rare I ever get a DOA part or a dead on arrival part. It did have a bad power supply. That was our most recent dead part right out of the box. And prior to that, I can't remember anything being DOA. It's been a long, long time. Manufacturing processes are so much better because it's all robots. It's all machines doing everything the same, working 24/7 and not complaining. You work me too hard. You pay me too little. I need a break to smoke a cigarette. Had a friend of mine tell me a story where he does work in clean rooms where they manufacture dies. So a die would be like Intel when they make a CPU. I don't know if you've ever seen how that's made. You can search for it here on YouTube. They have these high-end lithography machines that, you know, that essentially have a round silicone disc of varying sizes, and they print across the entire disc. And then that disc is cut, and there could be 30, 60, 80 dies on one, and each die goes on a chip, or if there's multiple dies, maybe on one chip. And it's done in such a small and delicate manner. We often measure that with, well, it's a 12 nanometer process, a 10 nanometer, and the smaller we can get it, the oftentimes the more efficient it can be, but also the more powerful it can be. So this friend of mine works to fix those machines when they break. Now you can imagine that stress, right? So if you've got a clean room where you can't have any dust or anything like that, or it affects whether or not that die is going to work. The room has to be completely free of particulates. And they have a certain allowable, like it would be impossible to get rid of every single particulate, but it's typically parts per million or ppm. When the dies come away from the machine that is just printed on them, or on this lithography, they then go to another machine to be checked for how many parts per million of particulates or particles that don't belong there are there, and there's a certain tolerance. So he tells me that he works for this company that's off the charts on the parts per million. Like everything's going fine, and then one day the machine's going, you've got 10,000 ppm, and they're like, this, what's allowable is like 7, something. I don't know. I'm just making up numbers, but what's allowable is very low, and what it was reading was beyond any comprehensible reasoning. And they say, hey, we need you to fix this. He comes out and he looks and can't find anything wrong. Now, one of the chemicals that's used in the process of manufacturing, it runs through a line in the ceiling, of course, and it goes through to the machines, and it has to be cooled to a temperature like, I don't know, 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And if it's not cooled at that temperature or lower, then it's wet. The gas becomes a liquid. So this thing is like a gas when it's chilled. So the lines have to be chilled. And first thing is, well, it's got to be something with the lines. And the company that's a separate company, they come out and they check the lines. And he says, show me the dyes let me see these particulates that are, let me see it. And he looks at it and there's no particulates on it. He's like, this is perfectly clean. This is well within the parameters. They say, well, it isn't. And he's like, but it is. So like then the machine is measuring it wrong. We're using the same machine. This is the same machine that told you it had 10,000 and now it says it's got like 6. So they're like, well, let's take a look at this. And sure enough, as these dies come out, they just keep failing, 10,000, 20,000. But then they let them sit a couple hours and they check them again, and then they're at like 7. What's happening? Does anybody want to guess what happened? Because it took this company 6 months to figure it out. Side of the GTX 1660, we got some documentation. And then we got the graphics card. So it's people are asking about MS Config. What? Just hit Control-Alt-Delete, go to your task manager, and go to your startup tab. Welcome to Windows 10 from 5 years ago. Anyway, this friend of mine who does these repairs, he's as stumped as everybody. This problem is going on for 6 months, and how do you check the quality of your dies if you know that the information's wrong? You could put them in a stack and check them again later, but how can you believe anything at this point? You still have to manufacture, you still have to stay in business, you still have to manufacture product and sell product, and if it's testing a couple hours later, then I guess it's probably okay. That's a heck of a way to run your business for 6 months. So my friend is back over there, once again, still trying to figure this problem out. And as he's walking to the manufacturing room, he sees an emergency exit door propped open with a rock and an employee outside smoking a cigarette. Now, the emergency exit door was not alarmed, and it didn't have a camera on it, and it was probably required for fire code building regulations. And what was happening is the hot air from outside, when that door was propped open with the rock, because it would self-lock, because it's a security, it's an emergency exit. What would happen is the hot air would come in, and the lines are running, in the ceiling, and it would heat the line up. So that chilled gas is now becoming a liquid, and it's spraying liquid right on the dies, and then after a little while it would evaporate off. What do you think the odds of anybody finding that particular solution were? And it just happened by chance. He was walking by and he's like, that door is not supposed to be open. And he looks and there's a guy out there smoking a cigarette. That guy cost that company several $1 million. That one employee cost that company several $1 million. And it wasn't even an employee, it was a contractor who had been there about 6 months. That contractor doesn't work for that company anymore. Can you imagine? He told me that story. I'm like, I gotta share that story because that's fascinating. All right, here's our Zotac 1660. It's got one 8-pin power connector required to give it some juice. I like that we don't have that stupid little PCI plastic cover. We don't have any of the little plugs covering up any of the ports. The ports on this, it's got 3 DisplayPort, 1 HDMI. It's going to take up 2 slots like most graphics cards. And twin axial fans, 2 fans. Axial fans. Listen to me use those fancy words. And that's going to go in the 2nd and 3rd slot here. So we got to remove these 2 screws. And these screws here, Corsair stopped tightening them. So I always have to make sure before I'm finished with the build, I go through those and tighten them down, because I'm shipping the computer, and as it ships, it gets vibrated and those could fall out, and then they can cause damage depending on how much the system's bumped around in shipping. Greg says chilled lines are normally insulated. I do believe they were insulated, but they were never insulated to a point that you could bring hot air up for 15 minutes and have that insulation completely not affect the temperature of the line. It's pretty interesting because you'd think, well, they could have just chilled the line a little bit more, but the more you chill the line, the more it costs you. And if they'd have chilled the line more than as the line heated up for 15 minutes, in theory, it could have still stayed below its liquid point where, the gas becomes a liquid. So, but you wouldn't know to do that. Why would you do that when you don't know why that's happening? But they did have the company that is in charge of that line verify the temps going into the line and coming out of the line. And it just so happens that guy wasn't outside smoking a cigarette, right? So everything's checking out all the time. And yeah, they're out there 10, 15 minutes with that door propped open. That temperature rise is pretty significant. We're not talking a couple of degrees difference now. I mean, it's significant. And when they insulate lines, they're not insulating them like that. And unless they have a reason to. No, they wouldn't make it a thermos. So anyway, it was pretty interesting story. I just want to tighten these. Again, I don't know why Corsair leaves them loose. I think that's kind of weird. These two are coming out. It's great fun talking with other technical people because even though I never worked in the manufacturing or fabrication areas of Intel, I always enjoyed when I had to go there looking at the people put on the full bunny outfit. You at Intel you had to put on a full jumpsuit with a hood over your clothes, goggles, and a mask. And then you walked into an airlock. And the airlock had all these air nozzles on one wall and all these other air nozzles on the other wall. And you turned around in it, and then the light went green, and the next door opened, and then you could walk into the clean room where that fabrication. That's what I'm saying. These particles per million, these particulates, it's got to be. You're going to ruin and cost the company a lot of money if you don't go through the right procedure. And they call it a bunny suit. And I would jokingly say, somebody be coming out of the room, they'd be taking their hat, the cover off, and taking their goggles off. And I'm like, man, I really want to go in there with a box of powdered donuts. They'd look at me and they'd be like, no, you don't want to do that. I'm like, no, I really want to do that. We'll take these spare PCI slot covers and we'll just throw them in the motherboard box, and that'll go back to the customer in case they ever want to pull the graphics card for any reason or whatever. It belongs to them. There's no reason for me to keep them. And somewhere in here we'll have some power for the GPU. That looks like it right there. And then we can use either of the two connectors. Doesn't matter which one. There's a 6-pin connector and a 2-pin on each one because graphics cards may have 6 or 8, and then they may have another 6 or 8 depending on how much money you spent on your graphics card and how much power it consumes. So for this one, we're just going to push the 2-pin connector beside the 6 pins, making it an 8-pin connector. And look on the graphics card for where the little plastic clip holder is because that's going to determine whether the clip goes on one direction or the other. Sometimes the clip is on the bottom, or in graphics cards like this GeForce GTX 1660 from Zotac, the clip goes towards the top. Now, I prefer the clip on the top when I'm working on computers so I can see it to remove it. But you can usually feel it. You can put your finger in there, but I much prefer to see it. That's all there is to putting the graphics card in. Now we can fire up the machine and load the driver and make sure that that video card's working and run some benchmarks, check our temps on Prime 95, check our numbers on TimeSpy. I think TimeSpy with a 1660 should be around 5,800, 5,900, I think. Anyway, if we're in 5,700 to 6,000, we're good. We don't have to go any more precision than that. That means the card's performing as it's supposed to. Sometimes I kind of mix the 1660 and the 1660 Ti up. The Ti will run a couple hundred points higher on times by. Let's see, where's my HDMI cable? Now remember, we were using integrated graphics during all the testing prior, so we're not going to plug into the motherboard. We're going to plug in down here into the graphics card, and this is plugging in right to the back of your monitor at home, so you can see exactly what I'm going to see. Keyboard and mouse, they're hooked up. Power supply switch needs to be turned on. It is. So let's turn it on. We'll see the fans are spinning. The red light has come on the board. And let me flip over to camera 2 so we can see what's happening. Okay, so we're at the desktop, and if we just give this a minute, it's going to recognize the graphics card. And I have to install the, I don't have to. I can either plug it into the network and let it grab the drivers automatically from the internet, which is what it's going to do anyway. And I can also go to nvidia.com and download the latest drivers, or you can go to Zotac and download their drivers, but I much prefer to grab right from Nvidia. So let me just grab a networking cable and we'll plug this in. Of course, if I would have gone ahead and put the Wi-Fi adapter in, I wouldn't have to grab a cable. And when I walk away from the camera like this, when I go with either a shock mount, a boom microphone, a shotgun microphone, which is what I mean to say, or the binaural, you'll hear me walk away and you won't hear me anymore. So one of the advantages of keeping the lapel mic is that no matter where I go, you have a level of audio that's always consistent no matter what. And I don't know if that's better because it feels a little less realistic. If I turn away from you like this as I'm working, that's going to have a significant audio impact on a shotgun mic or a binaural microphone because my audio is I'm blocking my own audio that way. If you're walking outside with somebody, having a conversation with somebody, and they start walking ahead of you and you're both walking the same direction, and they don't turn back to look at you when they're speaking, you're probably going to have a hard time hearing them, especially if there's cars or other noise going by. So that's why I'm so curious about how this is going to work in reality, and if it'll be worth it for me to just always face the camera. I don't know. It may not be that big of a deal, or maybe it will be. There's only one way to know. I keep telling you guys, you can't sit here and say what'll happen if, and ask people and then think what you're going to get is an accurate response, because there's so many different variables that you're not even realizing. You don't know to even consider them. It's only until you actually exercise that, you try that you have the experience that you're going to know the answer to your question for sure. One of the things I enjoy so much about Amazon is that return policy. So I can feel free to sort of experiment with it in my own environment and see how setting up wireless receiver was referring to the wireless keyboard and mouse. There's no Wi-Fi on the board. Just wanted to alert you to that. Let's take a look here. Where is it? We'll go to Windows. Oh, it's the wrong mouse, Carrie. We'll go to Windows Update. So right now, whether you realize it or not, Windows is grabbing the NVIDIA driver from the Windows Update server. So whether or not I choose to check for updates doesn't change that. It's still grabbing it in the background. And if I let it sit long enough, that you'll see the screen blank out and then it'll come back on. And for example, like I'm getting an error, and that's usually because there's some update happening in the background and it can't do two at the same time. That's typically why I would get an error like that. See, the screen just blanked out right now because as I was telling you, that driver was updating from Windows Update servers. That's exactly what happened. And you'll see all the text got smaller. We're no longer in that safe mode anymore. And now we've got higher resolution that a graphics card can provide. So if I retry the Windows update, it should let us know we have no updates. Now we can go to NVIDIA and we can download that latest driver. So let me just make my screen a little bigger so I can see what I'm doing. Let's close that. Let's bring up Microsoft Edge. And we'll go to nvidia.com. And then we'll click on drivers, GeForce drivers. And then we want our GTX 16 series, but not for notebooks, just GTX 16 series. Now, it doesn't really matter what you choose here. You're going to get the same driver no matter what for the series of card, but that's okay. It's fine. Just tell it. And then we'll scroll down. There's a studio driver. This customer probably needs the studio driver, but we're going to do the game ready driver. I can't remember, but we'll do the game ready driver. And that's, 562 megs. Luckily for me, I have a fast internet connection, so it only takes about 10 seconds to download. And then as soon as we've got that, I'll click on it, and we'll start that NVIDIA driver install. Now, while that's extracting, we can close the browser because we're done with NVIDIA. We received the file we were looking for, so we don't need to be there anymore. And now we're extracting the contents of that file so we can begin the install of the new driver. And it's, again, just takes a moment, depending on which graphics card you've got and which driver you're installing. And of course, what kind of system you've got. If you have a mechanical hard drive, this process is going to take a little longer. And I just go with the defaults on the NVIDIA driver. It's all good. We'll just let that run here, and should be through that here maybe 2 minutes. A couple of contributions have come in, so let me say a thank you to... No, it's just one I missed. Okay, Paul O'Brien contributes €1. Thank you, Paul. Would you be able to do double driver or slim drivers? Yes, I would if I was in 2006. But since I'm not in 2006, I wouldn't use those applications anymore. But I suppose if I still had a Windows XP computer I needed drivers for, or maybe even a Windows 7 or Windows 8 computer, I might consider using those. But since I haven't been using those for 5 years, I wouldn't. Thomas Tidwell contributes $5. Hey, Thomas, thank you. And Joe Biancardi with a $4.99 contribution says, hey, Carrie, it's just a little something for the doggos. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, all too often on the internet, I'll see people watching a video of mine that I did 5 years ago. And they want to tell me something about the video. Hey, Carrie, you missed a screw in the lower left. They're like, that was 5 years ago, dude. People don't pay attention to the dates. Other times, people pass around information that they learned 15 years ago, and they say, they say the exact same thing they've been saying for 15 years. They never change it. And so somebody who doesn't know any better says, hey, what about these great system utility? You don't need any system utilities. Windows 10 is all self-maintaining. And they say, what? Why was I told? Well, because the person that told you that is still living in the past. But you don't need to live in the past just because they are. With the new driver installed, we've got to restart the computer. This should be a pretty quick process. And while that's happening, let me grab my utilities flash drive so we can run a few tests. And let me grab my timer. So when I run Prime 95, I can run it for a minimum of 15 minutes to ensure that the CPU is running nice and cool, or that it never exceeds, I don't want it any higher than 85 degrees Celsius when it's being pushed on all the cores at 100% for 15 minutes, which no customer would likely ever do. So if it'll do that, then whatever the customer will do to it, it should handle without any problem at all. So I'll plug my flash drive in here and we'll copy a few utilities that I use. Any of these you can Google. I cannot distribute them. They are not mine. And if I distributed them, that would be illegal. But you can download them. You can search for them and download them. And there's only a handful of utilities that I use. And I just have to use the right mouse in order for things to work for me. And here on my flash drive, what I'm going to use is, well, I've already run the Uncle Carrie's Windows 10 optimizer because I can see none of my system icons are hidden and this PC icon is on. That's how I know I've run it. I don't need to run my Netfix tool. So I go up here into my PC testing software. We already have the Samsung Magician software installed and the Samsung NVMe driver. You can see here it says the NVMe driver is from Samsung. And if there was an update, there'd be a big capital N right around here that would be standing for new. And that update would be either for the Samsung Magician software or for the Samsung drive firmware, which is all current. Now looking here at my tools, I will run TimeSpy, or let me install it is what I mean to say. And I'm just going to install it right off this flash drive because this is a very fast flash drive and it's plugged into a very fast USB port. So the installation on this should be darn near as fast as if I copied the files over, but because it's 6 gigs of files, it would actually take longer. So we'll let that run here for a minute. Let me grab something to drink out of my refrigerator. Gatorade's good here. Now you're going to see this icon sometimes on the bottom of your Windows 10, and that usually indicates some sort of an update requires you to restart. Now you don't have to do anything right away, but if you're somebody that normally leaves your computer on 24/7, when you're done with the computer for the day, just go ahead and hit restart, and then you can turn your monitor off and go to bed or whatever you do at the end of your day, or at least as far as the end of your day with working with the computer. Otherwise, if it bothers you to see that because there's an update pending that needs to restart to take effect, then save everything you're doing, close all your applications. If you have Outlook, close it. In your browser, close it. It is not critical that you close it, but it is critical that you save any work and then go ahead and restart the computer. And if it's a computer like this, you're back up in 10, 20 seconds, depending on, sometimes on update processes during the reboot, and that may delay your normal speedy startup. But most of the time, it's just a normal restart. That's all that's needed. This is just about finished. It is a big install. And let's go ahead and launch the product so we can get the updates to that. I'm going to want HW monitor for testing and Prime 95 version 26.6 for testing. If I need anything else. Here it says there's an update available. I hit download, and that should happen relatively quickly. And install it. And I don't want to run any testing while there's an update waiting, because then that test theoretically isn't going to be accurate. So after I get all the updates on 3D Mark and knowing I've got that little update down here in the corner wanting to restart, I will go ahead and restart the machine. And then ideally, we won't have any more restarts required. No other things will be pending. And then our testing will be far more accurate as to, you could test it and then some update goes in and it doesn't test right anymore, in theory. But once it's in the hands of the customer, that's nothing I can do about it. But I can at least make sure when I sent it, it passed all of its tests. Then I'm going to hit update right up here, and it's going to install that update. And then there's another update down here, so we'll install that one. It says it's got to close everything. It's got to close the 3D Mark program to install because there's files in use with the program running. And you'll see it happened almost instantaneously. It recognizes our processor, our graphics card, and our system and storage all on these 3 boxes below. So with that, I can do a normal shutdown and restart here. And you will say there is an update and restart option. And I'll go ahead and select that. Not quite sure why that happened, since we had just checked for updates at Windows Update. It said there was nothing there. I suspect it had downloaded something in the background. And then after I restarted with the Nvidia driver, that update had completed and said, oh, hey, you got to restart now. That's just me being impatient. You see, it's a pretty fast reboot on these modern machines. This machine is dead silent as well. And we should no longer have that issue down here. On my Intel-based systems, I put on this Intel Driver Assistant. This is something that AMD does not offer, and it's one of the reasons I don't like the current status of AMD. This is a free utility that you can use on any Intel-based system, and it will scan your system for any Intel devices and drivers. You may have an Intel Ethernet card. It'll make sure your driver for that is accurate. You may have an Intel solid state drive. It'll make sure that your Intel driver for that is up to date. You may have an Intel-based chip, I hope you do, or you wouldn't be running the Intel driver and support assistant, or it's only going to help you with your Intel GPU. Well, when Intel comes out with GPUs, perhaps it'll offer that. So anything made by Intel that could be on your system will show up, and it'll tell you if there's any drivers. If we were installing, for example, if we were using the integrated graphics on the chip, on the CPU, and that integrated graphics had a driver update, that will tell us. AMD doesn't do that. So this is really beneficial because it'll sit and run at all times down in the system tray with that little green dot. And if that dot is not green, then there's an update waiting, and initially it will pop up with a little window, a little notification area down there, and say, you got a new driver waiting. Do know that when you install these drivers, they typically require a reboot. So don't do that if you're in the middle of work. It can wait till you're done. But just when you're done, make a mental note to say, oh yeah, I want to install that and apply it and reboot the computer. And then you can shut it. You don't have to wait for it to reboot. You just, once you say to reboot, you can turn your monitor off and go about your day you normally would. On the other hand, if you're someone who shuts your computer off and you don't leave it on, well, then of course you'll have to wait for it to reboot. This should come back and be green. Everything should be happy. And then you can shut it down as normal. It's just one little added step. But at least that way you're not guessing. Let's go to the AMD website and look and see if there's new AMD chipset drivers. Let's do that every day. I hate to do it once a month, because what if the driver came out the day after I checked? Then I waited a whole month to not have the latest. It's really, really annoying that AMD does that. Even Nvidia, the reason I don't use the AMD graphics cards, Nvidia does the same thing. If there's a new driver update, it'll tell you. Now, AMD's graphics card drivers will do that now, but they only just started doing that within the last 18 to 24 months. So for the last 10 years, they've never done it. NVIDIA's been doing this for, I don't know, 5-6 years now. It's quite helpful to have the latest drivers at all times. Let's go ahead and run the 3D Mark test, and we'll see what kind of scores we get. I want to say 5,800 is my guess. And I think it's like 6,000 if this was a 1660 Ti. I think I have that right. I'll just click run. Now this is going to go through a standard demo before the benchmark starts. The only way to get around that is to pay for the benchmarking software. It's kind of expensive. And I'm not benchmarking because I'm looking to set a world record. I'm benchmarking to make sure that the graphics card is working, that the benchmark runs without crashing. I've certainly diagnosed a couple of systems here on this channel where this very benchmark fails to complete. It crashes. And so that tells me I have a problem, not to send it to the customer that way. So that's why I'm running benchmarks. It's verifying that the system is operating properly. And then the benchmark numbers, I sort of have a range that I'm looking for. I don't have a specific number, just a range. So 5,700, 5,800, or anything above that would be nice. If it comes up at 6,000, that's great. It's great. Bill wants to know if there's any tools that I can repair Windows with. The best way to repair Windows is to reinstall it clean and fresh. Now, if you're afraid you're going to lose data, stuff like that, that's why you're supposed to have backups. But if you're afraid about losing applications, too bad. Those applications, however you put them on, they didn't just go on by themselves. You put them on there. So if you put them on there before, you can put them on again. The best way you can repair Windows is to reinstall it. And if you don't have, or if you're afraid that, okay, I don't have backups and I blah, 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 what you can do is you can get a spare hard drive. Hard drives are so inexpensive. It's crazy how inexpensive hard drives are. In fact, Newegg sent me 2 Western Digital Green 120 gig solid state drives for free. Like, they can't even give them away. I was buying a couple of Corsair 200R cases. And Newegg was like, we got a special. If you buy a Corsair 200R case, you get a Western Digital 120 gig solid state drive for free. I don't want 128 gig. You can keep 120 gig solid state drive. What am I going to do with that? The minimum I'll put in is 240, and that's if I'm giving it away. The minimum I put in for customers is 1 terabyte. What am I supposed to do with 120? And Newegg's like, well, what are we supposed to do with them? I mean, that's not what they said, but clearly they want to get rid of them. So even if you just had a 120 gig SSD laying around, or even if you had an older mechanical drive laying around, disconnect your main drive, do your clean Windows 10 install, and then once that's done, you can then hook up your original drive and then copy your data back off onto the temporary drive. And then as far as anything else goes, applications have to be reinstalled. And then you can use a Cronus and you can clone it right back over onto your original drive. And now you don't have Windows that needs to be repaired anymore. I haven't seen a customer come here with a Windows 10 repair in a long, long time. Windows 10 is so self-healing. I don't recommend you try and repair Windows, because for Windows 10 to be so broken it can't fix itself, that's a real serious problem that you are likely not going to be able to fix 100%. What's more than likely to happen is you will fix that problem, which will lead you to your next one. And then you can spend all the time and effort fixing that one, which will lead you to your next one. And this will just continue. And then you'll never really know when the next one's going to crop up again. And it'll never run as fast and as lean as a new install. So that's my advice. A 1 terabyte SSD should be under $100. There's no reason. I see them on sale for $85 regularly. You go to signupforslickdeals.com or sign up for Newegg's newsletter. You'll see them on sale. 1 terabyte, 2.5-inch solid state drive, under $100. The Intel 660p's or 665's, which is an NVMe 1 terabyte drive, is regularly right around $100. Sometimes you'll catch it on sale for $99. if you have a computer that supports that. It's not big money. Carrie, Windows 10 clean the registry like third-party software does. Cleaning the registry was something we did in Windows XP. It's something we did in Windows Vista, Windows 7. It is entirely a waste of your time to clean a Windows 10 registry. The way the registry functions is not the same way the registry used to function. And well, programs like CCleaner can remove unused registry entries. It will make no impact in reliability or performance no matter what you do. So it's psychological, it's a placebo. You say, oh, wow, look at all these items it's removing from my registry that the computer was ignoring and has no impact on the performance or reliability of my computer. You'll find the computer runs just as fast. And if it was crashing before you clean the registry, it will be crashing after you clean the registry. And if your computer was running fine before you clean the registry, there is a risk that the computer will now crash after you clean it. So my advice is let Windows 10 maintain itself. If you leave it alone, it will run more reliably, more consistently, and for a longer period of time. If you go in there for no apparent reason, but you have some sort of technochondria and you feel the need to clean your registry, don't let me stop you. It is the most pointless, redundant, and unnecessary thing you can do to Windows 10. And if you want to go back 20 years and you want to do it 20 years ago, I'll be right behind you, guiding you and recommending it. This is not 20 years ago. Please, I'm asking you to join us in 2020. So in 2020, if you're using Windows XP, well, then you go ahead and clean your registry. But if you're going to clean that registry because you're having a problem, it's not going to solve your problem. And if you're cleaning the registry because you think it's going to improve your performance, it's not going to improve your performance. And if you're cleaning the registry because you think this is better for Windows, it is not better for Windows. Your Windows may start crashing afterwards, and you only have yourself to blame. So if your machine is working, leave it alone. And if your machine is not working, then ask us here in the chat. Tell us what's the problem. Don't guess, I think I have a virus. Don't tell us that. Just say, here's what the computer's doing, and let folks like me and others in the chat guide you to finding a solution. Cleaning the registry does not fix anything, not on Windows 10. It can only cause problems. At the best, it won't cause any problems, but nothing runs any different. And at the worst, it can cause problems. So a score of 5580 is a little lower than I was expecting, but I can't remember exactly what it was before on other machines, but I was guessing 5700. We're right in that ballpark. It went through the whole test without crashing. It's a validated score. So I'm good with that. I'm happy with that. And now I can start the Prime 95 torture test on the CPU. And this is a particular interest. I don't know if we have John Yasuda in our chat room today, but he's having some overvoltage happening on his motherboard to his chip. It's causing his 9700K to overheat. And a Mugen 5 cools a 9700K perfectly just fine, unless you overclock it or overvolt it. And I think John put a beta BIOS on his machine, and I think the BIOS is overvolting his chip, and he's having overheating issues now. So when I run this Prime 95, I'm going to be running HW Monitor, which was going to show us our voltages to the chip, to the CPU, to see what our voltage consumption is. And I hope that can help guide John to where he needs to manually set his voltages. Or John can try rolling back to a prior version of the BIOS, but you might brick the motherboard in doing so. So we look at our voltages, or rather, let's look at our temperatures on the CPU. We've got 8 cores, and our current temps are down in the 30s, which is brilliant. It's brilliant. The maximum temp since I started the software is only 41C. Now, when I run Prime 95, it's going to ramp up pretty quick. and so are our voltages. If I look back, I haven't started Prime 95 yet. If we look back at our voltages, one of the reasons it's running so cool is you'll see the chip is not running at, 4.8 or whatever. It's down 800 megahertz because I'm not doing much. I'm just sitting at the desktop. So it's going to run nice and cool. It's not drawing a lot of voltage. But we can see the amount of voltage if we look at, well, right here, we've got it's all vid, where's CPU voltages? Right here, we can see the voltage is being used. And by default, you should be able to set your motherboard to auto and it should just handle it. But some motherboard manufacturers, especially with the beta BIOS, they are increasing this voltage in order to get some higher numbers over here when the turbo kicks in. So we'll keep an eye on both of those, but primarily I'm watching these temperatures. So here we go. We're going to start the test now, and that's going to run all 8 cores at 100% usage, and I'm going to start my timer so we can let that run for 15 or more minutes. You'll see the temperatures are climbing already. You can see on the left side, this is our current temp. In the middle, this was the minimum temp recorded since I started the software. And over on the maximum, that's the maximum temp recorded so far. And I don't want to see anything more than 85 during this test for the next 15 minutes. We can also come down here, we can check our clock speeds. Different cores are going to run at different speeds. Usually when they sell you a 5 gigahertz processor, what they're saying is one of the numerous cores will hit that at turbo sometimes. So everything here, it looks good and it's varying like it's supposed to. And if we come down, no, I want to go up and see what our voltage is. We can see we're putting a little more voltage to the chip, but not a whole lot more, just a little bit more. And this is important to know if you ever need to go in and manually tweak your BIOS, if you're a victim of a manufacturer who would so callously overvolt your hardware, your expensive hardware, so that it makes them look like they're selling you a better quality motherboard. Let's hope this is a trend that ends very soon, because it's happening across Intel and AMD, because the motherboard manufacturers who make Intel boards also make AMD boards, and somebody got it in their head that we could do really good on YouTube reviews and other reviews if we overclock and don't tell them we're overclocking. You would think that when you set the BIOS to default values that you would be running default specifications as defined by the manufacturer of the CPU, but that is not what some motherboard manufacturers are doing on some of their motherboards, and it can make diagnosing a problem very, very difficult. And I think if we put enough pressure on the motherboard manufacturers to tell them this is unacceptable, you cannot set the default values to be greater than the engineering specifications of the chip that I paid for, because you are putting my system reliability at risk. I am losing work because of you. I am paying a tech to diagnose a system because of you. And you may be shortening the life or damaging the parts that I paid for that the manufacturer didn't pay for. I sense a class action lawsuit coming up. And if anybody wants to pursue a class action lawsuit on that, if any of you watching are a lawyer and you need to have a couple of plaintiffs, hey, sign me up. I'm all for it. No problem. I have enough video evidence here to show damages as a result of BIOS manufacturers upgrading the defaults without informing the user, as well as an article by Maximum PC that identifies it, that I would be very happy to present in court in an effort to receive compensation, not for myself, but as punishment to the manufacturer, to incentivize them to stop that practice immediately. I don't mind if the manufacturer wants to offer that, but it needs to be off by default. If you enjoyed the video and you'd like to see more like this, be sure and hit that thumbs up button. That's right there. You give that a tap. And if you enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel. There's a big red subscribe button, or whatever color it is. And then next to it is a little bell icon. That's the notifications. And you turn that bell icon on by clicking it, then it turns notifications on. Well, what are notifications? Notifications are a way that you can learn immediately when new content is posted or a YouTuber is going live, but how you want to be notified is unique to your YouTube account settings. So you have to go to your YouTube account settings. That's a little gear icon by your name in the upper right corner of YouTube. And then you will click on settings. And under settings, you'll see the option for notifications. And if you just read what's on your screen, it should be pretty clear. And beyond that, you can search Google or YouTube for that subject matter, changing notification settings. Just be aware of what year the video was posted, because the way you do it today is very different from how we used to do it last year. I've seen videos posted from 2015 about how to change your notification settings. Don't waste your time. That information will not benefit you at all. My thanks to Jason Baum, who's contributed $5 and says, Carrie, I've been enjoying the late night streams lately. Right on, Jason. Thank you. Rock and Rob with the $2 contribution, and he says, just cuz. Kevin Arsenault has contributed 20 Canadian dollars. Hey, thank you, Kevin. Marty UL, there he is. Hey, Marty, he's contributed $20. James Prezi has contributed $5. He says, your videos usually consist of 10% work and 90% knowledge. Thank you for imparting your wisdom on us for free. I learn something new from you every day. Yes, James, you can go to any YouTube channel and watch somebody work, but if they don't explain why they're doing what they're doing, or if it's not clear what they're doing, or why they chose these parts, or how these pieces go together in complete detail, and what happens if you don't do it right, well, I'm not quite sure how much educational value those YouTube videos have if you're a novice who's never done it before and you have no point of comparison. So it depends on the video, but lately, yes, they have mostly been talking more than working, but that's not always the case, nor will it always be the case. Federal Sparky contributes $5 and says, I spent hours trying to solve a Windows 10 problem for a new game, and it ended up taking less time and less stress than doing a fresh install. Well, there you go. That's where I'm at with the old streamer. Remember, I told you, I said the old streamer needs a clean install. I'm not going to waste time with that. We're going to put a clean install on it. If the problem still happens, then I know I've got a hardware problem somewhere along the line. It's all about the value of your time. But if you don't know what's wrong, how do you know which one's going to be faster, fixing the problem or reinstalling it? The problem with fixing the problem is there may be more than one problem, and you can only fix one before you see the next one. So what might have been a 5-minute fix suddenly is a 10-minute fix, and then you're like, well, it's still faster than a reinstall. Oh wait, there's another problem. Now you wish you could roll back time and start over and just do the reinstall. Because if you still have a problem after a reinstall, you have a piece of hardware that's bad, and I'd start with your RAM. It depends if you're working for a living as a tech. You can't spend hours trying to find a needle in a haystack. Your customer's going to be upset over how long it's taking you. Your boss is going to be upset that you're not generating more revenue and doing more work today. Everybody gets upset. So you have to just do it as quickly as you can. And a reinstall is always going to do that. You always need to have backups. Always. Not just when you're having a problem. You need to have backups before you have the problem. And since you don't know when you're going to have a problem, you better make those backups regularly. So when the problem unexpectedly happens on the day you didn't know it was going to happen, you're already insured. You've got backups. It's no big deal. Right now we're looking at, let's see, nice and chilly, 62 degrees is the maximum temp. We're at 8 minutes into the test, a little more than halfway through. But you can see how well the Mugen 5, a single fan air tower cooler, works so well on that 9700K. If you're running into heat-related problems on a 9700 or even a 9900K with a Mugen 5, that tells me you didn't install the Mugen 5 correctly. Maybe you forgot to take the little piece of tape off the bottom of it. Maybe you forgot to put thermal compound on it. But I think you probably didn't do either of those two things. What's probably happening is your motherboard BIOS is overclocking your chip, and you should go and load default values on the BIOS. And if that's not working, check to make sure there's not a latest BIOS. And if you're running the latest BIOS, you may consider rolling it back to the previous BIOS. But know that sometimes on some motherboards, rolling a BIOS backwards may brick the motherboard, requiring you then to create an RMA with the manufacturer and return it to them and get it fixed under warranty if the board is still under warranty, which it would be if you're running a 97 or 9900K. And this is true of AMD systems as well. The motherboard manufacturers are starting to put these over voltages on the chips. Once again, it makes it look good when the reviewers review it, and it's a complete lie. It's a complete deception, and it's being done deceiving the end user. So now an end user who doesn't know much about computers can't just hit load default values. It's supposed to be the other way around. Let somebody who's comfortable with computers go into the BIOS and turn the overboosting on if they want it. But if you don't know what the boosting is, and you don't know what a BIOS is, everything should be left alone, and everything should always just work. It shouldn't get hot. It shouldn't crash. Its life expectancy should not be shortened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Temps are looking fantastic here. Really, really good. And again, let's go look at those voltages. Those two things are tied together. These numbers right here, all these temperatures, are directly related to how many volts are going into that CPU. Now we can look at some other voltages as well. We can even go into the BIOS and look at the voltages, and we can see that this chip at numerous cores is ramping up to, let's say, 4,800. Now if we want to go to 4,900, the way we're going to get there is we're going to have to go into the BIOS and we're going to have to crank some of these voltages up. But if we do that, then we're going to see these temps go significantly up. You understand? So this board, the H370HD3, is providing enough voltage to get us a nice stable system that is not overvolting our CPU, which results in a CPU that lasts longer, a system that runs more stable, voltage regulator modules that don't get early failure because of how hard they're being pushed by the BIOS by default. Everything just runs flat, solid, it's fast, and anybody who claims that they can see a difference between 4,600 and 4,700 or 4,700 and 5,000, no, you can't. You're looking at benchmarks. You're not seeing that in the real world. 99% of you, if I put you in front of a machine and one's running 4.7 and one's running 5.0, and I don't allow you to run any benchmarks and I don't allow you to run any software to actually look at the numbers, you have to do it by how it feels. I'll let you put any piece of software on it you want that's an actual piece of software that's used, that a computer would be used for. Like, I don't know, word processing, rendering, any of that stuff. And then you tell me which one's which. And if anybody's capable of doing that, you represent a very, very tiny percentage of human beings. And I wouldn't want to be you because you sound like an impossible person to please. So for the rest of us, you will be very impressed with this system. Not only that, you will have it a very, very long time because other systems you'll see next year aren't going to run but milliseconds faster than this one. And those people that have those really demanding requirements, don't let them trick you into thinking that you need those things too. You don't. Most of you absolutely do not. And those who do, they already know they do. You understand? Like if you're wondering, do I need that? Then the answer is no. And if you do need it, you already know that. So either way, you already know. You don't have to be flipped the other way by somebody. It's ridiculous. You don't need me to tell you if you're hungry. If you're hungry, you know that. We're just a few seconds shy of 14 minutes on the test. Highest temp so far, 62. Nice and chilly. I like it. So we're going to just let that continue to run here. Maybe I'll let it run 20 minutes. It's doing really, really well. Photo Mix Media says use the Windows 10 timer app. I wasn't aware Windows 10 had a timer app. I have my timer here, and I often will just hold it right at the screen. So you are going to see it on the screen. It's not like whether it's on the screen on the left corner or the right corner makes any difference. And that's not a resource intensive app. A clock or a timer or a calculator isn't really doing anything to push the system significantly harder that it would make a difference. Farrell Sparky says, I have a hunch that a program I use to disable Windows 10's tracking settings somehow goofed up the game's ability to work. Of course it will, yes. A friend of mine keeps trying to bring up YouTube videos, and YouTube says, on occasion, it pops up and it says, there's an error connecting, or I can't remember what the error is. I'll have to recreate it, but it's a browser add-on that what's it called? Fair Play, or I can't remember that. I'll have to ask what the name of the app is. I keep forgetting. And it's I think to block ads. And what's happening is it just blocks YouTube, and YouTube comes up with a big error. And you can refresh, 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 and then YouTube works again. And this just drives me crazy. And then the same person says, I can't get Spotify to play anymore. Or it wasn't Spotify, it was Amazon's Prime Music. It won't play anymore. Well, there was a browser extension that was added that turns off autoplay for videos and music. So even though it wasn't autoplaying, you have a little window you could play on. That little browser add-on was preventing it. So if you have any problems in watching videos or playing music, it's likely your ad blocker or you've added some other browser extension, and that's what's causing your problem. These are all self-inflicted. If you would have just left it alone, you wouldn't. I keep telling you guys, if you just leave this stuff alone, you put the ad blockers on, and now YouTube, because everybody's using these ad blockers, YouTube showing 2 ads before most videos now instead of 1. And then YouTube turned on mid-roll ads on every single video, past and present, as retaliation for your ad blocker. So raise it up. Keep raising it. And YouTube's going to raise you. It's like the never-ending poker game where nobody wins. So frustrating. I'm not suggesting you don't have to have an ad blocker, but maybe turn that ad blocker off to support a YouTube content creator that you like. Many news sites like the Washington Post or the New York Times will not let you, and I might have those wrong, I want to say it's those 2, but there's many more than just that. You click on a news article and it says, we noticed you have an ad blocker and our content is paid with our ads. Do you want to exit the site, or do you want to turn off your ad blocker? And if you say, I'll turn off my ad blocker, it explains to you how to do that so that you can now read that news. Or you can just back out of it and pick another site and just keep going until you find another site that'll let you watch it. But there's retaliation for ad blockers that you guys are creating, and you don't even realize it, I guess. You don't realize the consequences of your actions. But nothing I can do about it. But we all have to suffer the consequences now because of it. And it'll just keep escalating. It's just going to keep going. Everything you guys do to block it, they'll keep doing to block you. And then for the rest of us that are just kind of sitting on the sidelines, now we get to watch more ads. Thanks. We get to watch your ads for you. Um, we're 19 minutes into the test. And the Prime 95 program can get pretty intense on the CPU right around now, but we're still not breaking 65. I mean, that's still nice and chilly, 65. Now, if you really care about your temps, then you definitely want a 10th gen Intel chip. There is no CPU that runs as fast from AMD or from any other previous generation of Intel that runs as cool. If this was a 10th gen chip, we'd be seeing 10 degrees Celsius cooler from Intel. If everything else was the same cooler, same benchmark, same test, we'd see a 10-degree difference because they've made the die thinner on 10th gen CPUs. And that's pretty incredible, and why nobody's talking about it, it doesn't make any sense to me. Because with all the temperature obsessed technochondriacs out there, you think they'd be all excited about this, but no, they're still mostly excited about AMD, which runs much, much hotter. So I don't understand that. I don't get it. But for the rest of you, now you know. We've just crossed over 20 minutes on the timer, and I don't need to let this run anymore. Like, there's no customer in the world that I would ever sell to that would push that CPU that hard for that long. Well, I should be careful what I say. With the new Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, I'd have to watch what it's doing, but it's pretty intense on your CPU, your GPU, and your storage. Like, that thing is intense. And I don't know how many of you have Microsoft Flight Sim 2020, but it's not like everybody's got it. It's not even like I only know one person actually that has it. So it's not like everybody's into flight sims. I'm not worried about it. Now I'm going to go ahead and just start turning that test off, and I'll shut the machine off so I can get the Wi-Fi adapter plugged in, because that's super easy. Now watch these temps. These are our current temps here on the left. When I close down this Prime 95 program, watch how fast that CPU cools off right now. Watch these numbers. Look how much cooler we're going. And look how fast we dropped. So that is how hot a CPU gets and how quick it can happen. Now, if the CPU were to have exceeded 85 degrees C, we're in no harm. There's no harm. If it could climb up to 100 degrees C, then it'll start to throttle. And if it goes to 101 degrees C, it'll shut the whole system off to protect itself. And then you got a problem to solve. And if your heatsink is installed correctly and it's been running cool, it's probably being overvolted from the CPU, from the BIOS, whether you did that intentionally through overclocking, or the manufacturer perhaps offered you a BIOS update and you took it. This is more likely to happen with a beta BIOS, but regardless, that's typically why that happens. Now let's shut this down. And then let me go back to big screen on camera 1. You see, people like to overcomplicate simple things. It's quite fascinating. I think I need a better cooler. Well, wait a minute. Wasn't that an adequate cooler for the last year and a half? Yeah, but maybe something's wrong with it. Well, did you move it? No. Did you drop it? No. Did you change anything about it? No. Did you look at it? Yeah. Is it clogged with dust? No. Is the fan spinning? Yeah. So why do you think you need a new cooler? Something else changed. Something else changed. So you got to ask yourself, okay, what did I change? What's different now than before? Did I update the BIOS? Normally updating the BIOS is a good thing, but with manufacturers on this new trend of overvolting for improving the appearance of better performance, who knows now, maybe it's worse because of it. I'm telling you, class action lawsuit's coming. It's coming. And these motherboard manufacturers are going to be paying some, they're going to be settling out of court. That's what's going to happen. They're going to admit no wrongdoing. They're going to settle out of court. The lawyers are going to make a lot of money. And anybody with an affected board is going to get $5 off if you buy a new board. But I don't care about that. I just want to see the manufacturers punished. That's all I care about. I want them to be incentivized to stop doing this. Offer it as an option, not as a default option. There's a contribution from Marty for $5. Hey, thanks, Marty. Blackwatch contributes $2 and says, what a week of live streams. I've enjoyed them all. Very cool. Thank you. The Dodge Whisperer. Do they break a lot? The Dodge Whisperer contributes $5 and says, thanks for the insight, Carrie. My MSI motherboard pushes my 9700K well over 1.25 watts, 125 watts under that sort of load, and I run a large air cooler, and it will hit 85 plus easily. Well, now you know why. Rockin' Rob contributes $2. Thanks again there, Rockin' Rob. And Frankie B with a $20 contribution. He says, hello, Carrie, and everyone in the chat. I hope all are well and safe. Hey, right on, Frankie, thank you so much. And, of course, Rockin' Rob and Dodge Whisperer, Blackwatch, Monty, Feral Sparky, James Prezi, and Kevin Arsenault, Jason Baum, Joe Biancardi, Thomas Tidwell, Paul O'Brien, Parker TX72, Mira Ora, Chris Kingan, Past Me, Keshav M, Dr. Michael Ferguson, Flappity, Joe Bush, Nick Poverman, Security Van Man, Stuart McMillan, John Craig, and Tony Wallow for your contributions during today's live stream. Let's get this Wi-Fi adapter installed and call it a night, because what I got to do after this is really boring. What I got to do after this is the cable management, and it's really, really, really boring. But it's necessary. It's got to be done. Now, on this case, on the Corsair 200R, there's not a lot of room back there behind the motherboard to hide all these cables we're not using, but there's also not a case window. So what I'm going to do, and what I do on every Corsair 200R, is I take all these cables that we are not using, and there are holes in the bottom of the 200R for an optional 140 millimeter fan, which is the stupidest location for a fan ever. Never, ever put one there. And I'm going to run a big 8-inch nylon zip tie through one of those holes and back up through another one of the holes, and then zip tie all those cables in a nice, neatly folded bundle right at the bottom so they won't rattle around, they won't move. But if at any point the customer wants to upgrade, they've got all the cables right there. They don't have to go find where'd my modular cables go? I put them away somewhere. I can't find them. That happens to me all the time. I hate it. On other cases, I would move these extra cables back behind the board, but it's such a tight fit back there. And again, there's no case window, so it's still going to look nice and pretty when you pull the panel off. But we've got enough cables back there already that's going to keep us plenty busy. But in the meantime, the last thing I've got to put on is the Wi-Fi adapter. There's a lot of choices when it comes to Wi-Fi adapters. The cheaper they are, the slower they are. You want to get an expensive one, it's going to last you a bit longer. The Wi-Fi standards keep improving. The range keeps getting better. The speed keeps getting better. I haven't seen much in the way of security getting better since WPA. But you compare, price for performance, whether or not you want USB or you want it internal. Do you want your antennas to be able to move around, or do you want the antennas just stuck right on the back of the card when you put the computer up against a wall? This one has a little stand on it that allows you to move the antennas around. You can get a stronger signal, just like moving any other antenna. And of course, it's going to cost a little bit more. This is the Asus, this is the 802.11 AC dual band. It's AC 1300, and it is a PCIe adapter, meaning it's going to plug into any of these slots down here. And in the box, I'd asked the customer if he meant to order from Amazon Warehouse. Anything that comes from Amazon Warehouse will have the Amazon Warehouse sticker. And he said he certainly did not intend to order from Amazon Warehouse. And he asked me, should we return it? And I said, well, I don't see any reason why. I've had very good luck with product from Amazon Warehouse, but I don't know how that happened. Because remember, customers buy their own parts. I I just build computers, I don't sell them. So we look up here, or in here rather, there's our driver disk. We're probably going to need that. With some Wi-Fi adapters, Windows 10 will auto recognize and install the driver, if you're lucky. And with others, and it's generally also related to the price. Like a lot of the cheap Wi-Fi adapters, you've got to put the driver on. A lot of the more expensive ones have paid Microsoft to test their adapter for WHQL certification, Windows Hardware Quality Lab certification, and then provide the driver to Microsoft to automatically feed through their Windows servers through Windows Update. So this is the antenna base. And what's great about the antenna base on all these Wi-Fi adapters is they're optional. You see the same posts here are the same posts on the back of the card. So you can plug the antennas directly on the back of the card and just have the antennas stuck back there. Or you can plug this into the back of the card and plug your antennas on this, and then you can move this around to get the best signal. Now, some of these are magnetized, and I really wish they all were. I don't know if this one is or not. It feels kind of light. Usually if it's got a magnet, it's a little heavier. Oh, I would say that is magnetic. Yes, thank goodness, which means you can even just kind of stick it on the back that way too, or stick it on top, and it's not going to move around. When they're not magnetized, they easily slide off and stuff like that. So if you're going to have that base and you're going to use it, make sure you get one with a magnet so it doesn't drive you crazy. Or I suppose you could come up with your own MacGyver solution, you know? Now these Wi-Fi cards, they're pretty small nowadays. This one is nothing but a giant heat sink. That's all it is. And you'll see we've got this PCI Express slot. It's just like a buy one. It's really super small. But it will plug into literally any PCI Express slot. It doesn't have to be a little one. Even the big ones, it'll plug into. The difference is the big one has this ability to move so much more data. So if you hog it up with one of these, this will work. But then if you add another card that is got a bigger connector because it needs more data, you might not have it available because you needlessly put this in it. So if you have one of these small PCI Express slots, which I have right down here at the bottom, second from the bottom, right here on the second PCI slot, that's what we prefer to use. It frees up the one below it. Also, by using that very bottom slot, it prevents us from having access to the bottom of the board if we need to change any cables or anything, which means we have to pull the card out to do that. By putting the card at the slot above it, we've got room in there to at least look. I still have to pull the card out if I had to, change any cables, but at least I can see what's going on much easier. So I'm going to simply pull this screw here from second from the bottom PCIe slot. I want to keep it as far away from the video card. Anytime I'm installing any kind of add-on card to a computer, if it's a USB add-on card or a Thunderbolt or Firewire, whatever, I don't know why I keep saying Firewire. I want to move it away from all the other cards. No matter what other cards I've got, I don't want to put them close together unless I have to in order to maintain cooler temperatures all around all the cards. This is a graphics card, and if pushed hard, it can get warm. And if it gets warm, everything around it's going to get warm. If I push my Wi-Fi adapter really hard, what do you think? It's got a heat sink on it. It gets warm. So that gets warm, the heat rises, it's going to warm up everything above it. So I want to try and get as much spacing between the cards as I can. And this is just going to line up with that slot. And it's very dark. I can barely see it, so I know you can't see it. And this little tab right here, this little skinny tab, is going to fit into a slot that's right between the end of the motherboard and the edge of the case. And if you don't line that up, you're never going to get that to seat properly. That can be very frustrating. Now, I cannot emphasize to you that what I'm looking at is completely black. I cannot see a thing. And I want you to notice when I plugged it in, the motherboard light came on. The reason that happened and the whole system turned on is I created a short circuit because I did not shut the power supply off before working on the system. That is really, really dangerous to your parts. Now, hopefully I just didn't short something out. I didn't see any sparks. Sometimes you see sparks. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that you always unplug or flip the switch to the off position on the back of the power supply before you change any memory or any cards or do any work inside of the computer. That is for the safety of the equipment more so than the safety of you. With the card installed, let me just go ahead and put the screw back in here that was holding the PCI slot cover in. And the box, the last thing the box has in it here, it's got the two antennas that we need. And then it's got this little adapter, and that's if you're putting this into one of those really small computer cases that they're like the micro cases. They're smaller. And it's just an adapter that you can change that metal plate out because the card is not very tall. And it can fit into the smaller case, which the name of the smaller case is eluding me at the moment. And as I mentioned, we don't have to use the little adapter. We can just screw the antennas directly onto the back of the card. And if I leave this plugged into the internet, we'll see if Windows Update can say, oh, I know what that card is, and grab the driver and install it for us. It's pretty cool. So you don't need any of those driver locating programs. Some of those are worse than viruses. In fact, I'd say 9 out of 10 of them are worse than viruses. So let's flip back over to camera 2 now, and let's take a look and make sure that our system still works and I just didn't cause a problem. Most of the time, you're not going to have any issue. But if you did it right, you should never have an issue. You don't have to wonder, am I going to have an issue? Just do it right. Peace of mind. It's probably going to be okay. How about you just don't do it? How about that? And then you take the probably out of this equation. Now I can go, let's see, right click on the start menu, go to device manager, and let's see if that Wi-Fi card is in here. Network adapters. I don't see nothing. I don't see nothing. That's not a good sign. Oh yeah, here it is. Broadcom 802.11 AC network adapter. So let me unplug my hardline cable. And let's see if we go down to this little globe. Does it see? Oh, there. It's all there. There it is. That was easy. Let's connect to my guest network. Connected and secured. Can we bring up a website? Let's go to YouTube. I'd say it's working. Ooh, 8D music. I don't know what that is. What are my guys doing? I got to check out my guys. What have they been listening to? We go to videos, and then we go to uploads. First time hearing Down Under. Oh, so 3 days ago was their latest upload. Let's see how Eva in the city is doing. You'll see I often mistype, and it just corrects. It knows what you mean. You don't have to be perfect. There she is. How's she doing? Let's take a look. What videos does she have? 5 days ago. Oh man, where's my content? All right, what else can I look for? 80s music. Oh, here we go. Non-stop 80s greatest hits. Ugh, nothing but an ad. What do we got? Should be a playlist. Where's the playlist? Okay, so up next. Wait, that's not right. We'll let that play for a minute and just hit the skip the ad. At least you can skip the ad. That beats blocking it anyway. There's no videos. It's just music. Ugh, it's no fun. 80 smash hits. View the playlist. Lionel Richie, Cyndi Lauper, Sade. Isn't that name Sadie? Sade? No, that's Sade. Kool and the Gang. Oh, yeah, Kool and the Gang. Get Down on It. Celine Dion. Oh, there's Get Down on It. And It's Too Hot. Yeah, we've had the hottest day ever in September today. It's 114 degrees. 51 days in a row of temperatures 110 or hotter. Everybody knows Take on Me and Jesse's Girl and Billie Jean. Oh, Berlin, yeah, from Top Gun. Cyndi Lauper in Let's Groove. That's a great song. Eurythmics, Sweet Dreams, of course. Billy Joel, Kenny Loggins. Oh, I hate that song. Whitney Houston, not a fan. Journey, I've heard it so much. Cyndi Lauper, heard that song a million times. Toto, okay, there you go, Mitch. Flock of Haircuts, yeah. Bruce Springsteen, another one I can't stand. AC/DC, oh yeah, oh yeah. Daryl Hall and John Oates, lots and lots from them, many songs. Paul Simon, You Can Call Me Al. I don't know what that means. I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why that's a hit. Billy Ocean, Caribbean Queen. Oh, and Loverboy. Where's Loverboy by Billy Ocean? Danger Zone by Kenny Loggins, another one that's played too many times. Spin Me Around. Starship, that's Jefferson Airplane, Jefferson Starship, or Starship, depending on what era you're listening. Men at Work, Romantics, Bangles, Loverboy, Rick Astley, Ray Parker Jr., Gloria Estefan, The Clash, Soft Cell, Run DMC. Well, that's it? That's where it stops? Why is ABBA in 80s music? Why is that? All right, don't get me started. Gary, you were started 20 minutes ago. You did it to yourself. We had nothing to do with it. I would say the Wi-Fi adapter is working. I think we're going to be okay. As I mentioned, everything is running beautifully. There's no way this is going to overheat for this customer. It's going to run nice and quiet. It's absolutely whisper quiet. I can't even tell that it's on, except I see the fans spinning. If those fans weren't spinning, I would assume that it's off. Like that little red light that was on before, it's not on anymore. I don't know what's going on with that. And of course, there's a power light. If I can turn this with the cables hooked up, you can see there's a power light right up there. And again, if I just tap the power cable, it's no different than hitting start and shut down with your mouse. You never want to ship a computer with the antennas attached to the back. So once the machine is powered off, we'll flip the switch on the power supply back off. And now I can switch back to full screen on camera 1. OBS needs to make a hotkey for that. And now I'll take these antennas off. Now here's the thing. There's no sense keeping this box. We're never ever going to use that smaller metal adapter. That's just trash. So the only other thing in this box is this little metal plate or this PCI part that goes onto those real shallow computers. You've seen me work on those here. But these antennas, these are going to go in the motherboard box along with the driver disk and utility that came with the Wi-Fi adapter. I don't like to use the manufacturer's Wi-Fi utilities because it's hard to help a customer through support if I can't walk them through the standard built-in Windows 10 Wi-Fi utility. Back in the day when Wi-Fi was new, Windows didn't have that built in. But by using the Windows 10 one, then I can know exactly where to tell you where to look and what to look for. If you use a manufacturer-specific Wi-Fi utility, I can't see it, so I don't know. Then these are the instructions or whatever that came with the graphics card. This goes in the recycle bin. And as you can see, that was an Amazon warehouse product, and it looked like it had never been opened before. Oh, and we can't forget this. This is the optional adapter that we can put the antennas on, and then you screw this end into the back of the card, and then the antennas, they go on there. And then you can move this around if you're, worried about these being up against the wall. But don't ship a computer with these attached. They will break off. But that's Roy's whole build. All it remains is some cable management. We'll get this cleaned up a bit. Remember, there's no case window. The only way Roy's going to ever know that that looks so pretty is by pulling the panel off. Maybe we'll give it an autograph like an artist on the inside of the panel. So when Roy pulls it off, there'll be like this, thanks, Roy, signed Carrie Holzman. That'd be kind of cool. But I won't put it on the outside because that'd be like graffiti. But I can put it on the inside as a nice surprise. Maybe put down 9 of 2020, something like that. So we got a date, and then I can ship it on Tuesday because it's a holiday on Monday. So thank goodness I'm one closer to. I got to finish up the streamer, the temporary streamer, which requires me pulling the capture card out of Thready, which I can't do because I'm using Thready right now to broadcast now. So when I get the other streamer set up, then I'll have Thready up here, and we're going to rebuild Thready with the 3960X, new motherboard, new RAM, new cooler, and thinking I want to pull that Vega 64 out of there. Anthony Remus, who helped me out with this, was asking me how much I'd want for that Vega 64 because he was thinking of building an all AMD system, which is how I got myself into all this trouble 2 years ago with Thready. And I think I might just package it up and mail it to Anthony as a way of saying thank you. But to me, if somebody mailed one of those to me, it would be an F you, not a thank you. But, to each his own. To each his own. All right. Before I wrap it up tonight, a couple other contributions. Also, if you have any questions for me, please ask them now. I'll do my best to provide answers for you. Michael Dane contributes $5. Hey, thank you, Michael. You're the man. You working on System 29? Jack Wilson, John Wilson. We call him Jack. Jack's contributed $20. He says, here's for the channel and the cute dogs. Oh, sorry, Jimmy, you're not getting anything. It's so mean. Jimmy's a very good looking dog. He's proud and noble, and he really looks. And then Lyle's just cute like a little bunny rabbit or a bear. Jimmy is noble. Anyway, thanks, Jack, for the channel and the cute dogs. And yes, you are cute too. Oh, now you're going to make me blush. Glenn's Music with $5 Australian. Oh, and get those eyes checked, Jack. Glenn's Music says, let's see, and the airlock said, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't allow you to do that. That's a 2001 reference. Joe Biancardi with another contribution, $4.99. Thank you all. Thank you, Joe. Glenn's Music, Jack, Michael Dane, Frankie B, Rock and Rob. Michael Enright says, Carrie, thank you for your comments on registry maintenance. Fully understood and appreciated. Hey, thank you for the question. It's a fair question. I'm always countering all of the old information. It's a never-ending job. People won't stop talking about what we did 20 years ago because they don't know any better. They still think partitioning for separating your operating system from your data is a good idea. But the reasons we used to do that were because of cluster size, which is not a problem with NTFS. But if you're still running an operating system in FAT16 or FAT32, then that rule still applies. But I don't know anybody who is. We haven't been doing that for a long time, so you don't need to do that anymore. It's stupid to do it for any other reason. It's illusionary. It's placebo. Also, defragmenting drives is just ridiculous. It's something we did it for a reason. You don't do it anymore. And then system utilities, they're all built into Windows 10 now, and it's self-maintenance. It's all self-maintenance. Type in on Windows 10 on your lower right, where it says type here to search on the lower left, your lower left corner there. type in storage settings, and you can turn that on and tell Windows to clean up your hard drive of temp files and stuff every week or every month, or only if your drive space gets low. I wouldn't wait for the drive space to get low. I would do it every week or every month just to keep it clean. And then you don't need any system utilities. It just handles it all on its own. And that's all being turned on by default in Windows updates, either that have happened or that will happen. Nunman1962 contributes $30. Very nice. He says, thanks for the content. You are the marathon man. Is that like the Muffin Man? Thanks, guys. Nick wants to know if I've used the CNVI 802.11ac Wave 2 on the. Yes, I have. Yes, I showed that here on the channel. If you search my channel for the word Wi-Fi, I think the title of the video is how to add Wi-Fi, and I go through all the different. You can do USB, a PCI internal card, the CNV kit I had in a box, took it out, hooked it up. It's all been done. Yep. I don't think it makes any sense though. The reason I don't want to use it on systems I'm shipping is those little tiny antenna cables easily fall off, and it would be very difficult for a customer to get that back on. Customers that have never worked on electronics are supposed to now put this little tiny cable back on, and I'm afraid it'll pop off in shipping, so I'd rather not use it. But I did show how to install it and how to use it on that video. What I forgot to show is that you can buy a PCIe card that'll take that little CNV adapter and plug it in, and then you got two different, like of all the different ways to add Wi-Fi, I forgot that one, and I have the card. It's like sitting over there. I think I have it sitting over here. I totally forgot about it, but I'm not remaking the video. But there's a little tiny card in here, and you can put that little CNVI, whatever it's called, adapter in this card, and then you can plug this card in. But again, for a desktop, it's just stupid. I think that just using a regular PCIe card is going to get you better performance. You don't have to worry about the cables falling off, especially when you're moving the computer around. And those little tiny Wi-Fi cards are great for why they were invented, which is laptops, tablets, real small, thin, portable devices. Intel NUC, things like that. Michael Dane contributes $2. He says System 29 was built for my mom. Nice. So System 30? That's a heck of a milestone. Giving away 30 computers? Wow. I don't think I've given away 30 computers. I think I was, what, 26? Although I do have another 20 yet to give away. I just haven't had time. And besides that, going to FedEx with a mask on during the pandemic is a little unsettling. I'll do it if I have to, but I really would prefer to wait for this to hopefully get better soon. But you still got to work. Still got to do what I got to do. But if I don't got to do it, it's going to wait. But I don't have time anyway, so. Donald says, I enjoy watching your show on a computer you helped and inspired me to build. That's awesome. Photo Mix Media says, can you refresh my mind again why you partitioned your Acronis USB thumb drive? Yeah, so when you build an Acronis Rescue media, and you could make it on DVD or USB, it takes up the whole thing. It'll try it, you'll see. And I had a 256 gig flash drive because I spoke to Acronis about it, and they said, well, you can partition the flash drive to this minimal size that Acronis needs. And I made it a little bigger, so it can accommodate future versions of Acronis. And then use the rest of the flash drive to hold your images. So I can boot from the same flash drive that Acronis Rescue is on and save the images on the same flash drive, which is a really fast and large capacity flash drive. But if I didn't partition it, the rest of the flash drive would not be available to me to use. And furthermore, if I wanted to upgrade, like let's say, for example, Acronis has an update, then you have to recreate the flash drive bootable media from scratch. And the way Acronis does that, or Rufus or anything else, is it needs to format any flash drive. The first step is, okay, you're going to wipe everything out on the flash drive. You say, okay. Well, because the entire Acronis rescue disk is on that partition, then it just wipes out the Acronis bootable part and it leaves my images alone. Now, this is very different from the reasons why we used to separate data from an operating system back in the day, because what that's doing is it's putting a self-imposed limitation that you will eventually bump up against on a very large drive, and you're segmenting it where you will eventually have to repartition it and resize it because you're going to eventually one day run out of room. And reinstalling Windows is so infrequent that moving your data over isn't going to save you from ransomware or viruses. If your drive fails, you're going to lose all the partitions regardless. It's an illusion that it's in any way, shape, or form beneficial. People are like, well, that way I can reinstall my operating system without, losing my data. Well, your data should be backed up regardless, so that should be irrelevant. You're still going to have to reinstall all your applications regardless, and that's really where the problem is for most people when they don't want to do a reinstall. They don't want to reinstall all the apps. I don't know where they are. I don't know where my codes are, whatever the excuse is. But the idea that your data is on another partition gives people a false sense of security. But in the case of the Acronis rescue disk, it's a different scenario because I will be guaranteed reformatting it at least 3 or 4 times a year. With every single time Acronis updates, I need to make an updated rescue disk, and I don't want to lose those images. So I hope that's clear to you. Whoops. Critical thinking, folks. Critical thinking. We don't do things because other people do them. We do things because it makes sense, or we don't do things that other people do because it doesn't make any sense. It's tradition. Why do you do that? Because that's the way we've always done it. That's the dumbest reasoning I've ever heard in my life. So we're going to just kill a bunch of turkeys one time a year. It's like turkey genocide. We have to have turkey on Thanksgiving? Yeah. How come? Because that's the way the Pilgrims did it 200 and some odd years ago. Oh. But I mean, we can eat turkey throughout the year. Oh, sure. But on this one specific day, you're supposed to eat turkey. So on this one specific day, an unusually large amount of turkeys are going to perish to feed all these American families for this one day because of health? No. Because of availability? No. It's just tradition. It's what we always do. Oh. Well, I guess that makes sense. I've said this before, but for those of you who haven't heard it 8 million times, little girl sees her mother cut the end off of a ham before she cooks it for Christmas dinner. She says, why do you do that, Mom? And she says, because that's the way my mother always did it. So the little girl sees a grandma and says, hey, Grandma, how come Mommy always cuts the end off the ham? She said, that's the way you always did it. And Grandma says, well, that's the way my mother always did it. Well, great grandma's still alive, so little girl goes to great grandma and says, how come Mommy and Grandma, they cut the end off of the ham before they cook the Christmas ham? And great grandma says to her great granddaughter, dear, I don't know why they do that. I did it because my pan wasn't big enough. I do not like traditions. I don't like traditions, and I don't like rituals. We do things that make sense, and if they don't make sense, we don't do them. We means me. I obviously can't speak for you. For all I know, you like to beat your head against the wall because you find enjoyment in it. I don't find enjoyment in it, but I won't stop you. How do I like my ham? It's times like that when I like to mention my Jewish background. What do we got going on in the chat here? Madi contributes $2. Hey, thank you, Madi. Feral Sparky says, Carrie, you were right. My motherboard's been overclocking my CPU so high, my temps were hitting 95C running Prime 95 with a Hyper 212. I found the setting in the BIOS and disabled it, and now it's much better. It ain't rocket science, but I'm telling you, these manufacturers need to be held accountable. There's going to be a class action lawsuit. I promise it's going to happen. Even if I have to spearhead it myself, I don't think I'm going to have to. I think it's going to happen without me, but it's going to happen. Carrie, do you have any traditions? I'll celebrate my birthday and other people's birthdays because it's a good excuse to get together with friends. I will celebrate Thanksgiving because it's a good excuse to get together with family, but I prefer to not have turkey on Thanksgiving. I like to have turkey every day except that day. When a bunch of people are all doing the same thing, I cannot express to you what happens in my brain, but like a big warning bell goes off. It's a big warning bell. You see, I think in a previous life I might have been a lemming, and I died very young following the other lemmings off the edge of the cliff. And I said, you know, the next time you come back to life, don't do what all the other lemmings are doing, because that didn't work out so well for you. I don't know, just speculating. Cop Watch Transparency in Virginia contributed $5. Last night, if you're watching last night on the live stream, about an hour, I don't know, maybe 2 hours in, there were a couple of gunshots that went off, and I'm sure my microphone picked them up. And I couldn't stop broadcasting. This has been an ongoing problem. We have one of the reasons I want to get out of Phoenix is it's quickly becoming Mad Max around here. Between the cars that drive 60 or 70 miles an hour on a 25-mile-an-hour road, or they spin out and make donuts on the farm across the street, or they have illegal non-roadworthy vehicles. There's a neighbor down the street that has a bunch of like off-road style Polaris, and some of them are licensed, but most of them are not, little motorbikes and stuff. And I guess they like to test them before they go out to like, there's a place called Glamis, which is a sand dunes between here and California. And I don't know, I'm just guessing, but I don't know if they own a shop, but they have tractor trailers of these things regularly at their house for years. And they drive them up and down the street. And oftentimes it looks like a 12-year-old kid. It's a vehicle that doesn't have a license. It doesn't have any lights. It's not road legal. And if they're driving down the farm, they're trespassing. What bothers me about it is it could be 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and these things typically are very, very loud. So, you know, to heck with anybody who has to sleep and work in the morning. It's just very rude. And then we have people driving the cars up and down, shooting guns in the air. So after the broadcast, I went out to the street with a flashlight and picked up a couple of 9mm shell casings in the road. And then I called the police, and the police officer recognized me, which I thought was pretty funny. And he's like, "You're that guy." And I'm like, "I'm that guy." And I'm like, "My neighborhood is quickly eroding into a lawless society. Is there any way we can get more police presence here? Because just you being here, they won't do anything. None of this happens. You don't have to do anything. Just make sure they can see you. And if they can see you, they behave. But if they can't see you, their moral compass ceases to exist. In fact, everybody in the neighborhood ceases to exist, and they do whatever the heck they want to do, regardless of how late at night it is, and regardless of how many people they're disturbing. It never seems to occur to them that they don't live in this neighborhood all by themselves. And I said, I realize I might be sounding like an old man, and I'll be yelling at kids to get off my lawn, but it's relentless. If it's not one thing, it's something else. I can't get 2 days of peace and quiet. If they're not speeding up and down the road, racing their engines, if they're not running these off-road vehicles with no mufflers at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, if they're not shooting their guns in the air, it's not like it's only happening once in a while. This is happening more and more frequently in this neighborhood. This entire neighborhood is eroding rapidly. And if you would just increase your patrols, just park your car at the end of the street and leave it there for a couple hours. At least we'll know for a couple of hours we'll have peace and quiet, you know? And he's like, we'll do what we can, and we can record these casings. We have the ability now to identify, based on the impact on the primer, if it came from a specific gun. So if we arrest somebody in the future with a weapon, and that the casings from that weapon match any of the casings that you've submitted to us over the years, because this just is a routine. He says then that will be charged against them as well. And he said, would you prosecute? And I said, yes, absolutely, because those bullets are coming down somewhere. Are my dogs safe in the backyard? Am I safe in the backyard? What have I done to any of these people? I don't know these people. Why are they doing this to me? So yeah, I want to press charges. And he's like, good to know. And then that was that. So that's how my night went. I need to get back to Michigan. I got to go back to Detroit where it's safe. John Young contributes $5, and Steven Schumacher with a $1 contribution. Thank you all very much. Again, any final questions before we wrap up? This is the time to ask. Carrie, how is that big PC Skynet desktop working out? I haven't touched it, but I love it. I do love it. I can't wait to finish it. I really can't, but I've got responsibilities I've got to take care of first. Richard says a lot of people eat birthday cake on birthday. Well, yeah, that's true too. That's true. But I don't think any animals are dying as a result of that birthday cake. I don't think there's like a mass genocide of a specific species for your birthday. I've never celebrated your birthday, so I don't know. maybe you do it differently at your house. Sacrificing a goat. Yep, we need the police. We need good police. Let's be really clear. I love good police. I will give my life to help an officer in distress. But bad officers, bad police, they need to be exposed and they need to be tried for their crimes just like every other criminal does. Let's make no mistake about it. Bad police are criminals and they need to be exposed just like a criminal, and they need to be gone to court and held accountable for their illegal actions. Absolutely. But the good police, I am a huge supporter of good police. Absolutely. And I will say, the officer that arrived at my house, the fact that he remembered me was very impressive. I mean, I can't imagine how many people that officer has interacted with in the time that I last saw him. And I didn't recognize him, although I don't necessarily recognize myself either. But um, I was impressed. I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. So he's a good guy. He's one of the good ones. Hailstorm says I followed your build back in 2015 with the 4790 and the 980 GTX. Wow. With the Gigabyte gaming board and the Carbide 200R, and it's still going strong. Thank you. Right on. That's awesome. Yeah, why shouldn't it be? I recommended it. I'm still in business. Have I had any people with issues with the 2004 updates? No. Mm-mm. Most of the people that have problems with Windows updates have done something to their system. Maybe they edited a registry, or maybe they were using a piece of software that turns something off Windows. Oh, it's spying on me. I'm going to turn it off. Or they tried to outsmart Microsoft by making some changes that shouldn't have been made. Or they've got some outdated drivers they've never updated. More times than not, that's what causes Windows update issues. And then very rarely there's an update issue that just affects everybody regardless, but that's not normal. But what is normal are the people that manipulate their systems in a way that I recommend you shouldn't. This is why, because this is what happens. And then people go, well, it's Microsoft Update that caused the problem. No, it isn't. No, most of the time you caused it. You don't realize you caused it, but you caused it. Glenn's Music contributes $5. He says, move to Australia. The only thing we shoot here is our mouths off. I'll tell you, New Zealand looks pretty nice. I would like to visit Australia, but the bugs, I don't know. The bugs are pretty big. I would probably love Australia. I imagine I would. What Wi-Fi do I recommend? I don't recommend any particular Wi-Fi, just whatever meets your needs. Because it's got to match your router. So you can get the best Wi-Fi in the world, but if you got a 10-year-old router, it's not going to benefit you. You can have a best router in the world and buy the cheapest Wi-Fi and adapter, and it's not going to benefit you. So you get the one that's right for you. For manufacturers, I like TP-Link. I like Asus. Uh, uh, for routers, I like Netgear or Asus. And that's pretty much it, unless they're mesh networks, in which case TP-Link or even Eros from Amazon are good, but they're all pretty good these days. What is your Windows preference between Windows 10, Windows 8, Windows 8.1? This is an easy question. I like to live in the present. Saying I like Windows XP is saying I refuse to accept evolution in any way, shape, or form, suggesting that things used to be better with regards to technology means you don't understand or appreciate technology. So Windows 10 is the single best operating system I have ever used in my life. Period. Linux has way too many problems for me to even get into. Mac OS is way too restricted. Chrome OS is way too restricted. I like the freedom and the choice that only comes with having Windows. And that includes the danger, and that also includes the updates. So it's not all roses, but in exchange for that, I have the most freedom and the most choice. And I will take that any day of the week. There's Stephen Bernstein. Hey, Stephen, just saw you in there. Glenn's Music says he's in Melbourne. That's a pretty urban area, right? You're not in the outback. If you move to, Sharon says, if you visited Australia, you could complain about, you'd just complain about the heat, just like you do in Arizona. Yeah, you're probably right. Speaking the truth, spitting the truth, facts. There's John Davidson. You know, John is one of the original contributors to Threadripper. John watches us from Thailand, and John was very generous in his contribution with JD Beverage and Zone Tech, yeah. XNet PC says Windows Vista did not deserve all the hate. Yes and no. When Vista came out, it did deserve all the hate. But by the time Microsoft fixed it, it no longer deserved all the hate, but there was no recovering from the damage they had caused. And so what you're saying is yes, it's true. It didn't deserve all the hate at the end, but it's wrong in that yes, it did deserve all the hate it had in the beginning. So you can stand on either side of the fence on that one. I'll tell you what's interesting is the other studio location. That neighborhood is dead quiet. I'd never heard a gunshot. The traffic is got to be at least 70% less traffic. The road that the house is on is tucked away, so it's not a pass-through road. So people just don't drive on it for no reason. It's out of the way. So very little traffic on that road. But even the main road is 70% less cars on the main road. And as a result of that, I've never once seen an off-road vehicle, designed to drive through the desert that's not roadworthy, not road legal, ever. Never seen it. It's never happened. I've been watching that place for over a year now, and it's nothing but peace and quiet. And unlike my neighborhood, if I make eye contact with a neighbor, they smile and they wave at me. Like, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? It's never happened before. I guess I smile and wave back. Wow. They don't even know me. They don't even know if I'm robbing the place. That's cool. Very, very peaceful over there. So when I need to get away and I need some peace and quiet, I escape and I go over there, which is a half an hour from where I live. If the house you invest in, if your neighborhood starts attracting problematic neighbors and they start to outnumber you, do you allow them to push you out so you get away from it? Or do you fight to save your neighborhood, or at least try to slow down the erosion? I don't know the right answer to that, but I am clearly outnumbered. It wasn't that way when I moved here, and I could not have read the future and known that my neighborhood would turn so bad. And it's sad. It really saddens me for a couple of reasons. One, it suggests I made a bad decision. Two, I made a bad investment. And three, it feels bad to fight for what's right, that it just doesn't happen by default, that people just don't naturally have proper courtesy and consideration for their neighbors. And the other thing that bothers me is the gunshots. When they initially happened, I figure, somebody's going to call the cops, right? Nobody called the cops. They never do. So even though the shell casings weren't in front of my house, the house they were in front of must have been very loud, but they did not call a police. I said to the officer, I said, this happened, 90 minutes ago, but I just got done broadcasting and I couldn't do anything about it for right until I got done. But I went out in the street and I located the casings and here they are. Nobody, no neighbors called. He said, no, they never call. They just ignore it. I'm the only one. If I didn't call, those casings would still be in the street. So I guess it's time for me to move, but it's not like I wanted to go anyway, but feels like I'm being pushed out. It doesn't feel good. But I can't stay and just continue to be poked and poked and poked and poked by people who don't even know me and have no reason to do this to me. I'm not done anything to them. So all I can do is get away. And then, who's probably going to replace me in this house? More people like them. And then this neighborhood is just going to be It's going to be a neighborhood you're going to want to avoid. The way it's going, it's going to happen pretty rapidly, unless people like me stick around and fight back. And I don't care that much, honestly. I just want to go to Michigan anyway. It's just more reason for me to go, but it makes me sad. Solo says he's been where he's lived for 15 years and it gets worse every year, and I was told you have to outspend the bad guys. Well, that's true. The house I have is it's sort of a starter home, and so that attracts some people of financial means that perhaps have a different culture than I was raised, and there's more of them than there is of me. So buy a house that's more expensive, and then you distance yourself from those people. Generally speaking, there's plenty of people that have big expensive homes that have jerks for neighbors, but probably don't have an entirely bad neighborhood. You know what I mean? You still can have a bad neighbor, but that house on the other side of town where the studio is isn't really much more value than the one I'm in. But it's an older neighborhood. That neighborhood's 25 years older than this neighborhood, 30 years older than this neighborhood. No, 25. Whatever. It's an older, more established neighborhood. On the other hand, we have a city here called Maryvale, which you want to roll up your windows and lock your doors if you're driving through Maryvale. And that wasn't always that way, but now it's become really bad, and it's long established. So just because it's long established doesn't necessarily mean anything. Now that I've said it out loud and thought about it, forget I said that. Gregory says they had people going around stealing copper cabling from electricity grid. Yeah, we had that here. Yeah, they're stealing light posts for the aluminum. One guy electrocuted himself stealing copper power cables. Sometimes these problems solve themselves. Gary says, how would you like to be my neighbor? Where do you live, Gary? It's got to be better than here. Alien Bean says, things change. Yeah, things change, but you would think common courtesy and being polite would always stay. Is that an unreasonable thing? Is that evolution to be in a bubble and think you're all by yourself and you can do whatever you want? It can be as loud as you want and be as dangerous as you want. If you want to set your house on fire, who cares if it sets your neighbor's house on fire or what it does to the property values of the people around you, or the smoke inhalation or the damage or the noise? Wouldn't common courtesy always stay? I guess not. Sometimes things change and everybody just attacks everybody. That's not a change I'm looking forward to. And if that makes me old, then okay, I'll take it because I think a lot of those people with that attitude aren't going to reach my age. Move to Iowa. My home is Michigan, so I'll be going back to Michigan. Winston Anglu contributes $5 Canadian and says, "Come to Vancouver, Canada." I love Canada, I do. It's not my home, but I will definitely visit. Farrell Sparky says, "I don't mind walking down the street anywhere in Florida, but in Flint, Michigan, nope, no thank you." Flint was hit pretty hard, but The Renaissance Fair takes place in Holly, Michigan, which is just right next to Flint, and it's very nice. It's very, very nice. So that area that you're talking about is a very small area that's bad. And it wasn't always bad. Marsman says, home is where the heart is. That's what it's about. That's really what it's about. And no matter where you live, Florida's got some pretty bad areas you wouldn't want to be in anyway. Every place has those areas. Well, I keep doing YouTube. Yeah, I can do YouTube from anywhere in the world. I don't have to be where I am. I can do that anywhere. Gary says he's in West Bloomfield Township. Oh, that's a really nice area. I can't afford to be your neighbor, Gary. Cranbrook High School makes Oxford University look like it's for poor people. Gary, is 8 Mile really bad? Okay, so so 8 Mile is a long road. I used to live off of 10 Mile. I used to live between 10 Mile and 9 Mile. But that doesn't tell you a lot because 10 Mile and 9 Mile stretch for I don't know how long. But 8 Mile specifically in Detroit, Michigan was a bad neighborhood. What is it today? I don't know. I haven't been there. In fact, I never went there when I lived there, but I don't know. There's uh, a lot of empty homes. A lot of people have moved out, so it may just be empty. I don't know. Detroit, when I was there last, looked like a ghost town. There wasn't anybody. It was just buildings and a couple of cars here and there. It was just empty, sad. Didn't look dangerous. There was nobody to threaten, or it was just empty. Does your neighborhood participate in the Neighborhood Crime Watch program? Yeah, we used to have a Neighborhood Crime Watch sign that said, this neighborhood participates in the Neighborhood Crime Watch, and then somebody stole the sign. BJet Pilot says he's in Western Michigan, Muskegon, on the lake. Yeah, I haven't been to Muskegon, but I was just in Grand Rapids and Saugatuck. And if I could afford to live in Saugatuck, life would be good. But there's lots of areas around around that area, around just all around Grand Rapids. If you go an hour, pretty much all around it, it's all beautiful area. In fact, if you go north 2 hours, then you're in Traverse City and Leelanau, which is even more money, but it's also very touristy. A little too many people, too many people. But I think I could handle that if I was living there. I think it would be a good trade. But in Saugatuck, you have that beautiful Traverse City sort of look, but everything's clean. Everything's clean and everybody's tolerant. They're very, very tolerant. It's almost perfect. So, who knows? So again, any last final technical questions? We're going to wrap this up. Grand Haven, Michigan. I was told I should check it out, but I think it's too much farmland in Grand Haven, if I'm not mistaken. I do want to check it out. I'll see for myself. Gregory says maybe you wouldn't mind being too far out of town. No, I don't mind being out of town. I mean, as long as I'm not too far. The cottage I stay at in Michigan is about 12 minutes away from Grand Rapids. So I don't mind getting in the car for 12 minutes. I mean, it takes me 12 minutes to go 2 miles here. And there I can go 12 minutes and there's everything you'd ever want. Myers and Walmart and all the restaurants, everything. And then you drive for 12 minutes the other way and you're in the woods with a river and no traffic and no people. That's perfect. Will you be ready for the winters? Well, I grew up there and I had a paper route and I rode my bike in the snow delivering the Detroit news and didn't think anything of it because, I didn't know any better. Um, the Arizona heat is too hot. I would rather be cold. And I don't do anything outdoors. So that means I don't have to mow lawn in the winter. Um, Air conditioning is expensive. And when it breaks, it's like, $10,000 for a new air conditioner on a house. What happens if your heater breaks in Michigan? You start a fire. It's free. You just start a fire for free. So if I'm cold, I can put more clothes on. I don't travel to go to work. I'm mostly in the house. So the weather outside is nearly irrelevant except for the air conditioner constantly running and never getting cold enough. If I put my air conditioner on 74 degrees Fahrenheit and it's 112 outside, there's no way that air conditioner will ever reach 74. It will run and run and run and run and run and run and run. It just can't do it. When you're in Michigan and you're having a hot summer day, you have a lot of humidity. And what air conditioning does is it removes humidity from the air, meaning that less air conditioning is necessary to make you feel cooler because it just feels cooler because there's no humidity compared to outside. But Arizona, there's no humidity. So air conditioning has to work extra hard. And you're lucky if you can get a 40-degree difference out of an air conditioner. Like if it's 120 and you can get your house down to 80, that's a 40-degree difference. That's huge. So the winters, I'm not worried about them. I might regret that when I'm there, but I think I would much rather deal with the snow being snowed in than being sunned out. Like that sun is oppressive. When it's 115 degrees, that's oppression. You don't want to go out there. There's no clouds. It's just a raw sun relentlessly beating down on you in the summer for what, 16, 17 hours a day. Until the winter comes and the nights start a little earlier. When it starts getting dark, instead of at 8:30, it'll start getting dark around 6. The days cool down and it's much nicer. But I haven't had a Michigan winter in 40 years, so I don't know. But I will say that cars now all have traction control and all-wheel drive, and so driving in it now shouldn't require any special talent. It should be fun, I think. It's worth a shot. I think my first Michigan winter will be the happiest I will ever be. If I have to plow through a foot and a half of snow to walk outside and breathe that cold, crisp, clean air and see all those naked, tall trees, I can't imagine anything better than that. Again, any final technical questions, and I'll do my best to provide you an answer, or we're going to wrap it up for tonight and try and keep this under 3 hours. So I got 6 minutes here. Real quick, anything I can address technically? Matthew says you should move to the Upper Peninsula. That's a little too cold and a little too far away. Would rather be where I'm from or in that area. What kind of a roof do I have? I have a Spanish tile roof. Do you keep your swap file on a separate drive? Now, again, this is all old school thought. SSDs are so fast you wouldn't even know. And with the amount of memory people are putting in systems, 32 gigs, your swap file's barely even going to get used. So that's sort of a, again, it's sort of a thing from the past. For most modern computers, and even if you have a SSD, you're not going to see any performance difference. All you're doing is going to cause yourself a problem. I recommend you leave it alone. It's called Slow Down in the Snow, and we only have 20 below in January for 23 weeks. What do I think of the Surface Pro devices for programming? That's up to the individual to decide. I don't program, so I don't know. What kind of a water heater do I have? That's the strangest question anybody's ever asked me. Do I have a favorite sport? Does anybody have any technical questions I can answer? I'd be happy to answer any technical questions. Got about 3 minutes. Marty says, I just watched one of your builds and I have to say it was pretty straightforward and informative. Thanks. Right on, Marty. Thank you. Gary says he misses defrag and check disk. I figured there was probably somebody who did. I don't. I don't need it anymore. Does it snow where I live? Once every 7 or 8 years, it might get a light little dusting that goes away by the time the sun goes up by about 9 or 10 in the morning. It can happen. It's very, very rare. All right, guys. So it maybe there is a technical question. Can you use one network for 3 routers? Sure, of course. Do whatever you want. How you configure it's all that matters. On the H370 motherboard off the top of your head, do you know if the NVMe drives are the same speed? I can pretty much guarantee you a $100 motherboard will not give you NVMe drives of the same speed. The top NVMe slot is full speed and the bottom M.2 slot is half speed. If you want both to be full speed, you'll need to spend about 140, 150 bucks on a higher end chipset. That's universal. Okay, guys. Well, I guess that's going to wrap it up for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Winston and Glenn's Music and Marty and Stephen Schumacher, John Young, Copwatch, Transparency in Virginia, and Marty again, and Michael Dane and Hunman 1962, Joe B. and Cardi, Glenn's Music, John, Jack Wilson, Michael Dane and Frankie B. and Rockin' Rob and the Dodge Whisperer, Black Watch, and Farrell Sparky, James Prezi, and Marty again, and Kevin Arsenault, Rockin' Rob again, Jason Baum, Joe B. and Cardi again, Thomas Tidwell, and Paul O'Brien, and Parker TX72, Mira Ora, Chris King, and Past Me, Kev Shaw, Dr. Michael Ferguson, Past Me again, as well as Flappity, Joe Bush, Nick Proverman, Security Van Man, Stuart McMillan, Rockin' Rob again, John Craig, and of course, Tony Weller, who kicked us off with the first contribution. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you. I will see you all Monday, Tuesday. I'm not exactly sure. As soon as I can. Might have some pre-release content between now and then. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Have a good weekend.